Whoa. Can you?
Thank you. That's fun. It's fine. It needs to alert people.
Thank you for tuning that down a little bit, Jeremiah. So that we don't shake on you.
Good morning. My name is Haley Lyons, and I am the chair of the board. I'm calling this public meeting of the State of Oregon Board of Accountancy to order. Today is Thursday, January 29th, 2026, and it is 8:33 a.m. This meeting is being held in person at the board offices on 200 Hawthorne Avenue Southeast, Suite 450, Salem, Oregon, 97301. This meeting is being recorded, as was announced a minute ago. Zoom participation is also enabled. If you are participating in this meeting by Zoom, please be sure to mute your microphone and unmute only when you are called upon to speak. Please do not use the chat room for any discussions. Should any technical issues arise, the meeting will be paused until they are resolved. I will now take a roll call of members and guests. I will first take a roll call of those in the room, and then we'll ask to identify yourself if you are participating by phone or by Zoom. We'll start with Shelley.
Shelley Ostrom, Deputy Director, present in office.
Logan Seal, board member.
Jeremiah Lepper, board staff.
Tanya Moffett, board member.
Jason Robinson, board treasurer.
Jason Orm, LRC chair.
Angie Hunt, board legal counsel.
Raul Valdivia, vice chair.
Martin Petione, executive director.
Quinn Stoddard, board staff.
Sherry McPherson, OSBA CEO. Great, and we'll go those on Zoom.
Andrew Barlow, board staff.
Megan
Present by Zoom.
CPA board vice chair.
Mark
Megan
Wood,
Hartley.
CPA.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mark.
Megan Hartley, board member, present by Zoom.
And Amanda.
Amanda Fells, OAIA board liaison, present by Zoom.
I think that's everybody that we've got in okay, great. Awesome. On to the next item, agenda review and approval. Has everyone had a chance to review the draft agenda? Please note there were two versions of the agenda sent out. We are using the second version of the draft agenda that was publicized, which is labeled draft 2. Any questions, comments, concerns? No.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
May I respectfully request that a board member so empowered may make a motion for the following changes to the updated agenda draft 2. I would appreciate a motion to add under item 11 business, adding item 11H, attendance at the NASBA Western Regional Conference in Park City, June 22 to 25. And under item 21, ratifications, I would appreciate the addition of an item C for municipal audit registration. And I would further love to include in the motion removing item 3B of the agenda because I didn't get it done. To make that part of the motion. Meeting summary of October 21, 2025.
Jason Robinson, so moved.
Wait a second.
Logan Seal, I second.
Great, thank you. Any additional comments? We will take a vote, starting with Logan.
Logan Seal, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Raul Valdivia, aye.
Megan?
Megan Hartley, aye.
Thank you. Haley Lyons, aye. Agenda is approved as amended. Okay, item 3, review of the public board summary. Any questions, comments there? There's no motions here. It's just a discussion item if you have any. Great. On to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Please raise your hand in the room or use the Zoom raise hand feature. If I call on you for comment, you will be permitted to address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes, and staff will unmute you so you can speak. As chair, I reserve the right to end your comment early and have staff mute you if your comment does not pertain to the authority given to this board by the legislature to regulate the CPA profession and public accountancy firms in the state. Finally, if your comment pertains to the exposed rules of the board, these comments must be made during the separate rulemaking hearing, which will begin at 9 a.m. Is there anyone who wishes to make public comment not pertaining to the exposed rules of the board? Do we need to state that Ray has joined? Yeah, okay. We can see that on there. Hi, Ray. Okay, we will move on to report from associations, OSCPA.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Megan.
Wait, wait a minute.
Sherry, before you do, can I just note for the record that Ray Johnson has joined us for this public meeting so that we can record that in the oral record as well for this meeting? Thank you. Sorry, Sherry.
Oh, no problem. And we're thrilled to, I'm not speaking for her, but just to announce, we're thrilled that after the issue with the Zoom and a visitor, unexpected visitor recently, she's been let out of Zoom jail so she can join later then.
Jail because they used her name?
Yes, so anyway, thank you very much. And I just reported on some things, so I want to thank Megan for her participation as board liaison, as vice chair of the OSCPA board over this last year. And so this will be her last official meeting on that. So thank you, Megan. And upcoming, effective April 1st, will be Jared Holland, and Jared will be our vice chair effective then. So you'll have opportunity to meet him. Secondarily, we're working through our CBE scheduling, so that'll be announced out to members here just in the next few weeks. So a wide variety of courses, and we're working on also working through a number of projects to ease people's opportunity for sorting and finding what they want. So that's coming up. A couple of other things coming up. We do have the I want to put the official announcement out there with the calendar, so I always feel better about within the calendar. We have the Circle of Excellence coming up in May, and it's a week earlier this year, so Thursday the 7th. But I will send out something in writing on that because I always prefer to have something that is more in writing. But just kind of getting that out on your radar. That will be at the Embassy Suites in Tigard, where it was last year. So want to make sure that that's up on that. And I do appreciate the Board of Accountancy's participation in that, you know, being able to have the society, the Ed Foundation, and the Board of Accountancy up at the podium. It is much appreciated. And this year it'll be exciting because we'll, you know, looking for to have some grant scholarships as well. So, and speaking of that, we have official names for them. So we're kind of talking about that traditional OSCPA Educational Foundation Scholarship as academic. So if you hear academic, that would be that scholarship. If you hear accounting access, that is the name of the grant scholarship. So, you know, as a result of Senate Bill 796. And we're very, you know, thoughtful about saying accounting access because as you remember, some of those components talk about CPA or accounting, et cetera. So, and also we didn't want to call out needs-based, you know, a very, you know, blunt way, which is not very nice. So anyway, just making that comfortable for everybody and opening up opportunities. We're really excited about that. As of midweek, we had 98 applications. And when you get 98 applications, that also means they have to complete everything. So we have folks that have submitted in, and now we're waiting for them to wrap things up. That was set in around 45. So not too bad anyway, you know. So we've been pushing out information on that scholarship, which for community college, which is $3,000. That's a reminder on that. And then university is the $5,000. So those are really the biggest things that I want to share today. The deadline is February 9th. Everybody I talk to, I tell them, hey, whoever you know in the community and, you know, in your circle, please let them know that February 9th is coming up. The deadline has already passed for the academic, and so we'll be working on the next stage of selection. And so that will all be, you know, completed by the end of March. So it's exciting this first year. So we, you know, very obviously thinking about the KPIs that the board is going to need to present. Also kind of knowing we may not be able to give every bit of information we'd like to this first year because folks are just starting. So I expect that data will deepen as we go forward into the second year and then the third year and the seventh. So right now, we'll be able to talk about how many folks we have. We obviously don't have anybody through the pipeline yet this early. So anyway, that's the overall. Megan, do you have anything?
Nope, just pleased to announce the forward progress in terms of the scholarship applications and the good work that the OSCPA is doing there. So thank you, Sherry.
And we really appreciate the collaboration. I mean, anybody we talk to, they're so excited. And yeah, we have had a board meeting since. So I would say that when we were out in the community, and thank you again, Logan, when we were out in Bend, Southern Oregon, there was so much excitement in the room. So anybody you talk to, and I would say that, I did share a personal, and I'll wrap up. I did share a personal comment, about, some feedback that came my way about someone that was really struggling and getting through. And I was able to give them an update of the scholarship and, for the grant scholarship. And I mean, I just say the expression on their face was priceless. You can't even put explanation or, description to it. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Sherry. And thank you, Megan. Appreciated your time with us, and we look forward to having Jared join us. Amanda.
All right. Thank you so much. So at OAI, we are wrapping up our kind of CE season. We have our last update next week with the City of Portland, and then we are all focused on tax season. So yeah, it's been a strong year, and we've kind of saw those continuing trends of kind of decreasing in-person attendance, increasing online attendance. So we're kind of trying to figure out what that looks like every year, kind of moving forward. But yeah, so for us, it's been a strong year, and we're looking forward to kind of coming out the other side of tax season and planning for another one. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Sherry or Megan or Amanda? Okay, now it's the part where everyone stops making eye contact. Board officer elections. And you all look down and think like, don't call on me. So we,
There you go, Logan.
chair, vice chair, and treasurer for 2026. We will conduct the election for each role separately. So I will ask for nominations. Self-nominations are fine. And remember, when you make the nomination, to state your name as well. And then we'll get a second and do all the things. If there's multiple, we'll vote on. There's multiple. Which would be amazing. We have to vote on them individually. Yeah, let's do it. We'll start with the chair.
I nominate Haley to continue on her current position.
Thank you, Jason Robinson.
It would require a second.
I'll second that.
Great. I'd like to make a speech that'll be about 2 hours and do the gavel bang. Just kidding. Great. Any additional nominations?
No, we all like nominations.
Great. We will now vote on that, starting with Logan.
Logan Steele, aye.
Tanya Moffat, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Great. Haley Lyons, aye. I will continue as chair. Thank you for passing the gavel. But my term ends at the end of this calendar year, just FYI. Vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I, Tanya Moffat, nominate Raul Valdivia. I can say your
That's pretty close.
Yeah. For vice chair again.
Jason Robinson, I second.
Do you accept that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. Start nominating people and then being like, sorry. Great. Okay, let's take a vote.
All right, Logan Steele, aye.
Tanya Moffat, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Great. Haley Lyons, aye. We'll continue as vice chair. Thank you, Raul. And treasurer, do we have any nominations for treasurer?
Logan Steele, I nominate Steve Robinson as board treasurer.
I, Tanya Moffett, second that.
Thank you. Jason, do you accept?
I do. For one more year, like you.
To be
Is your
clear.
term also?
Leaving at the end of December, yeah. I have no choice.
These are killing us.
Pointed out that you have.
Can I just say that officially you serve until replaced?
So that's.
And I just may drag my feet, given how excellent to ever say anything.
It's like a life.
Sometimes you don't even have to drag your feet, it just is.
Slap the label.
That's right, that's right. All right, thank you. The motion is for Jason to continue as treasurer. Voting.
Logan Steele, aye.
Tanya Moffett, I.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. That's great. Thank you, Jason. Okay, we are done with that. We are a little early for the rulemaking, just now we will hold until 9.
So, Madam Chair, since item 7, the rulemaking hearing and the new business are somewhat interrelated, we can either start reviewing written comments or you could decide to skip ahead and see if we can get some new business topics that are easy out of the way, just so that we can make progress. Up to you, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, why don't we skip to report of the chair? Me. Let's skip that far ahead. Item 15. So update from the NASDA January 2026 board meeting and other NASDA items. That was last week in Florida. Martin and I were both there, as he is the liaison from the executive directors committee. Typical NASDA business. The big policy discussion was around APS, of course, and the peak exposure draft on that. And so there is, we need to figure out what a NASDA response is to that exposure draft. Before that meeting, we were planning on having the AICPA peak. We were going to sit through the webinar that's today as part of our board meeting. I think it's really important that we're all really clear on what's happening in there. There is going to be a NASDA webinar in next week, I think February.
It's February 4th.
That seems like it's probably a little better aligned with kind of our role as regulators. And so Martin and I decided to kind of pivot a little bit away from using that time for from the AICPA. There's a few things in the exposure draft that we probably want to address from a regulator standpoint. And I think that probably wouldn't have been quite as pointed had we spent time there. We also talked about the AICPA also has an initiative that they're calling the AICPA Profession Ready Initiative. And there is a pretty large advisory board of which Dan Beston, the president CEO of NASDA, is on. And the objective is to put together resources for firms and potentially educators for what a 1-year and 4-year staff person CPA, what do they need to know? And so we're keeping our eye on that from just a regulator standpoint, just to kind of, you just want to see what's happening. There's some concern that the AICPA isn't dropping the notion of, competency-based experience requirement that was part of, if you'll recall, that was part of the pathways. I'm kind of like, we don't care, we're in Oregon, we already have that. And I'm sort of looking forward to what is the AICPA, what are what is all the work going to come up with that then we can actually use to relook at our competencies and see if we feel like they're still in alignment. So I'm excited about the outcome from an Oregon perspective. I think that there's always some sort of concern on the regulator side of the society telling us what people should do and know and how do we, enforce that. But They've held several sort of working groups. I participated in one of them. And the big takeaway, I think we would all probably agree is it's kind of the people skills that are required in our profession. There was very little about kind of technical, in my very small subgroup, technical expertise, that type of thing. It's sort of like we teach that, but it's how do people communicate? How do they prioritize work? How do they handle stress? And those types of really what we, I think, aren't allowed to call soft skills anymore. I don't remember what we call them, but they're so yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm just curious, what drove your small committee meeting towards that, the soft skills and that being more
Yeah,
important?
the way that the questions were formed were, when you're thinking about a 1-year person, kind of what sort of deficiencies or what are you having to spend more time kind of training on or working with them on? And so I don't know if it's really like that the students are being prepared appropriately or the firms aren't providing the right onboarding training, right? It's like we train them how to do a lot of these technical pieces. And yes, they have a background for it from the university experience, but then they come in and we're like, here's how you prepare work papers. And this is how you do it within our firm, and kind of potentially gloss over this, like, and you're going to have to give, so like a 4-year person, and you're going to have to give feedback to the staff, and you're going to have to kind of be, you might have to give feedback to a client, you might have to have a difficult conversation, actually conversation on the phone. So kind of some of those pieces and just the ability to handle stress, I think is just harder in the world.
Sure.
So I think it'll be a really interesting output, and I think it could benefit us. And the idea is like, okay, we're going to provide this information or put this information out there, and then if you have a firm where you're training people, perhaps it provides some benefit for you bring people up. Any other takeaways, Martin, from the board meeting?
Nope, I don't think I have anything else to add from the board meeting itself.
Great. Okay, committee appointments. Any questions about the board meeting? Committee appointments and committee liaison appointments. We are working on appointments for BOAC, PROC, and LRC as a top priority. Those are really significant committees, so nothing really to report there. Just that we're continuing to kind of cut out people and figure out who's interested. So, appointments to the board by the governor and recommended to the 2026 legislative short session. Very exciting that Logan has been reappointed and Jason has been, not Jason, Jason. Trujillo has also has accepted the proposal to appoint Jason as well. So once we get through kind of that legislative hearing in a few weeks.
This short session, yes.
Great. Yeah, we will. I mean, you're still here, but we would look forward to formally welcoming Jason to the board. So it's awesome. Yay. Thank you guys in advance for your continued service, and your service also continued because you've had a heavy lift already with the LRC.
Yes, easy job.
You shall settle in nicely. You won't have to ask, should I sit over against the wall over here? Next to the table. Okay, I don't have anything else. We have 3 minutes.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I promise to keep my report to 3 minutes, do you mind if I take mine early?
sure.
Since I'm in the unfortunate position that at about roughly 1:30, 1:45 p.m. today, I will have to switch my attendance to Zoom because I have a doctor's appointment I have to get to that I could not move. That's that. I wanted to just very briefly under executive director's report, so under wherever that is on our list. I wanted to just very briefly touch on a couple of things. One is I am very grateful about how things are coming along in terms of Shelley learning things. There's a big learning curve, but it's super nice to have her here. And it was in the nick of time because my NASBA stuff has really taken off. And it's actually now entering probably its most critical period between not just the meetings I have to go to, but the organization of the March conference, which is really the primary job of the committee that I chair, which is the Executive Directors and Legal Counsel Conference. So that activity has been in super high gear. And so I feel very grateful that the board created a structure that allows me to give some space, and grateful to have Shelley here actually making that happen. The other piece that I want to just very briefly bring up, and I think, Jason, there was an email between you and I that you might even think about bringing it up here, is, what's often off the radar for courts like this is that it's not just that February is like essentially the full kickoff of tax season and everybody gets done under, but for us internally here, short session is another reminder where we enter into the, depending on your perspective, the gates of heaven or the gates of hell. And last night, the legislative system populated with hundreds, probably over 1,000 bills that are dropping. And it is a lot of work for small agencies like us to try to stay on top of, is there something there that could impact us? Because it isn't as simple as saying, search for the words Board of Accountancy, right? It's not that simple. So there is a lot of back end work that we tend to insulate the staff from. That's usually done at my level, where I am now, for the first time ever, have that ability to start training Shelley a little bit on what that looks like. Because really, what I'm hoping for is that both in the 26 session and in the 27 session, that essentially becomes her training ground for becoming more comfortable with, getting, essentially when necessary, stepping into my shoes to do what needs to be done for the board on the legislative side, realizing that, I have a little bit of an unusual background as a director since I came out of a legislative setting. So I have a little bit, it's very comfortable for me, and I need to keep in mind that not everybody comes at it with that comfort zone. So we're going to start that work too in earnest next week with real life examples of, hey, here's how I figured out that this might matter and this is how we need to respond. And here's what the rules of the game are. And all of that happens behind the scenes. The board does not see that work, but it is critical work that falls directly under the rubric of essentially what I like to summarize our job is protect the board, right? Protect the board's interests. And that can be a little bit complicated. I don't know, Jason, you watch this from another state agency's perspective and kind of walking through that. I don't know if you want to add anything.
So the first time in my life I'm on a legislative committee, and so the DOC includes their internal auditor on legislative processes. And there was only supposed to be about 200 plus bills.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more. So the legislation overall is kind of grumpy in that fact that newer legislators are not following the rules per se for the short session. But it is truly a tax season for the staff here.
And the one last thing that I was going to add to the dynamics of the short session. So everything I said up until now is generic for every short session. There's one other element that applies this time that is unique this time. This is the first time in a very long time that a short session has hanging over its head a downward correction that the legislature needs to make in the just passed legislative budget. And it has to do so under the background of HR 1, which is essentially kind of code for all the federal impact and the federal uncertainties introduced. Plus we have, that very Oregon unique problem of what I will diplomatically call the uncertainties and political tensions around transportation funding, the consequences of which can literally ripple out to every single agency, including us. Right. So, and how they react to that. So it's definitely going to be a grumpy session. That's it.
Okay, thank you. 6 minutes. Um,
Those close to 3 minutes times Martin, so.
There you go. Yeah, times the Martin factor. Okay. I am now opening the rule-making hearing for the proposed rules the board exposed in its Oregon Administrative Rules, Chapter 801. The time is 9:03 a.m. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the board's currently exposed rules? Please raise your hand in the room or use the Zoom raise hand feature. If I call on you for comment, you will be permitted to address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes. As chair, I reserve the right to end your comment early if your comment does not pertain to the exposed rules of the board. Sherry.
That's okay. Thank you. I was just waiting in case somebody online. So thank you very much, Sherry McPherson, CEO, OSCPA. And I'd just like to, I have provided written comments to the board, so you'll have them. But it is always nice to be able to have a verbal in case someone does have a question. My comments also, thank you very much for the contributions that the society's been able to make towards laws and rules. I really appreciate the collaboration. I know our board of directors does too. So not speaking for them, but we're advancing that message. And looking forward, I've received comments from, some of our members, a couple of large firms, hence why I'm passing these on. And if you have questions, I will attempt to answer them as thoroughly as possible. So primary, I have like 4 key areas. Principal place of business, so we'll refer to that as PPB. Defining professional to include consulting services, mobility, and then ESOPs. So on principal place of business, there's questions on, and basically the ORS defines the location of principal office where a person practices public accounting or as otherwise defined by the board by rule. It doesn't consider designating the PPB based on the CPA's own designation, and the proposed OAR definition does not reference allowing a CPA to specify their PPB. Sharing that best practices shared with me would allow, and from national sources, would allow the board to rely on the CPA's designation of their primary place of business by further defining the primary place of business via rule. That permission is granted in the statutory authority language, quote, or is otherwise further defined by the board by rule. So it's not just a random comment. This permission provides the board with the opportunity to adopt a definition more closely aligned with current professional practice. And we would recommend that the rules be amended to read as follows. Principal place of business means the location of the principal office where a person practices public accounting as designated by the person. If the board is not able to adopt that amendment, we'd ask the board to consider the CPA's designation of the PBB unless information comes to light to call that into question. So in other words, you had a question and what does this look like? This request comes out of this environment that we find ourselves in post-pandemic. And if you go back, let's just go back a number of years where everybody works in the office, everything was very physical. So today, where people are based all over the country, and it's not specifically a large firm. Either it pushes clear down into even small local firms because of remote employees. So an example might be, for example, someone they live in Seattle area, they work in a Seattle firm, they're in the firm most of the time, but when they come into the state and they're working on projects here, that their primary place of business they designated is still Seattle, or still Washington State. So, I'm happy to provide more information on that. Defining professional to include consulting services, just with the changing nature of things, the comments that were provided to me, mentioned that we encourage the board to consider removing consulting services from the definition of professional. And I shared that as consulting generally arises within the context of licensing experience requirements, such as under the UAA, rather than as a type of professional service performed by CPAs. So clarifying that could provide some clarification and reduce confusion. mobility regulations. The current OARs address this via the limited provisions in OAR. And so basically subsection 1 permits the licensed CPAs in good standing in other jurisdiction with their principal place of business outside of Oregon and substantial equivalency of licensed short practice in Oregon. And subsection 4 authorizes reliance on clause information for verifying substantial equivalency. So with the removal of subsection 1, but retaining subsection 4 renamed numbered, there was just the provided comment to me was, we understand the omission of subsection 1 eliminates explicit OAR language on mobility, except for references regarding clause. And based on that comprehensive nature of the Oregon Mobility Statute, the recommendation to the board that they retain subsection 1 to maintain clarity. The last would be ESOPs, and this is more, it's like, I bring this up because it was passed on to me and, could I share this? But I thought maybe not a bad topic to have. And their question was, basically whether related to the ORS was intended to provide that an owner could be a stock ownership plan versus they could have a stock ownership plan. So that was more like just a clarification that was needed out in the public space. So yeah, I know be or have. So we can go back into the rules and look at that. But I thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to share people's feedback that has come in. And I appreciate having been, through the process on the LRC and being able to set through. And thank you very much for the opportunity. And last, our board is very, and I'm not speaking for our board, but I'm just sharing that tone, very appreciative of the collaboration that we've been through on everything from rules and trying to make improvements and, helping folks move through processes, everything from academic to, statutory and the efforts on 797 and 796. Thank you very much. I want to put that on public record. Sherry. And a copy has been provided. Yes, they're in the packet.
We have additional comments from the public. No hands raised. This is when we have our discussion about how long we have to keep the rulemaking hearings open, and Angie says if there is no set time. Is that right?
Right. So if there is no set time for it to end, then
Right.
you can end comment, but then you can't take any more comment once you've ended the comment period.
Okay. Love it. Great. Okay. I'm not seeing any additional comments at this time. Okay. I am now adjourning the rulemaking hearing of the board and returning to the regular board meeting agenda. The time is now 9:11 a.m. Staff, would you please, in preparation for our work on adopting rules, now just check to see if we've received any more written comments since they were last published to the board? None have been received. Great.
Okay, so written comments from OSCPA were already published to the board last night.
No, they're in there now today.
They're in there now.
Yes.
There's a backstory on that, so yeah, watch for today's version.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go out and access the
Okay.
it's Pub 7, Jan 2026 public comments for rulemaking, they're included in that PDF currently posted.
I also
Okay.
sent you your rules last night.
Which should have been helpful.
That explains
It's embarrassing too.
You've now fully confessed. You can forget it.
Thank you. So much important session.
Yes. Okay, new business. So now is when we do consider the written and public comment on exposed rules.
All right. So in that document, which if I see the same thing that you're seeing is date stamped 8:41 a.m. this morning is what I have, what I'm working off of. If we kind of go in sequence. The first written comment that we have is from a retired CPA named John McDonald. And I'm actually really grateful that this gentleman wrote in, because in essence, as you can see from the, sorry.
Sorry, I want to make sure I have the rules open kind of as we go through there. Where do I find them?
It
You know,
should
I
be
get
under
so
the
confused
next
on the
agenda
thing.
item,
Okay.
it should be under item pub 8A is what it's covered as. That should be the rulemaking notice that has the full text in there. So pub 8A, if any one of you are looking at that, is where the full document that has the notice and the every single detail of the language.
Am I the only one that can't find it?
I can't.
It's not AA.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want paper.
No, I
but
know,
thank
but
you.
you'll have to.
Oh, yeah. 'cause
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, it's not AA, sorry, it's
I'd
pub
like
7,
everyone to
sorry,
have
pub
it.
7, it's the rulemaking hearing itself, sorry.
It's like, I know.
8A's discussion.
Okay, I see it.
Sorry, it's
I
pub
was-
7, sorry.
As usual, the first question to me when I say I can't find stuff should be, are you in a supplemental folder or not? And then that's when I realized, like, this is why I can't find anything. And so,
Yeah, we that part we pushed out as early as possible last time, because I know that
No.
there's gonna be a lot of reading.
yes, great. Thank you. Sorry. Continue.
So the first written comment we have is from from an individual named John McDonald. And in essence, it's actually one of the most typical questions that we tend to get. There is a lot of confusion about that space between what a retired level CPA can do, versus what a inactive can do. I don't think that this particular comment, this is my personal opinion, so please feel free to disagree. I don't know why this particular gentleman thinks that essentially you could only provide services at the bookkeeping level if you volunteer as a retired level practitioner. So I'm not sure that in this case the comment is on point. But I will say it's a very typical part of the general confusion around what you can or cannot do with the different license types, which also means that there is overlap between this comment and what we're trying to do, both in the rule itself, as well as the chart that is also on your agenda that was supplemented, where the staff did a lot of work trying to update a chart that we're trying to essentially run through the board, making sure the board agrees with it, that is essentially easier to access than a rule itself for most practitioners, and say, do we agree that this is a legitimate summary of where these boundaries are between these license types? So that's all I would have to say under that one, but at least from my perspective, that particular comment is simply a misreading of what we've proposed. It doesn't seem to trigger.
I'm not sure if I spoke with this individual, but I spoke with someone who was a retired CPA that had the same question. Their concern was that the new rule says volunteer or provide, and they read that as one dependent clause, volunteer or provide pro bono tax services, instead of volunteer or provide pro bono tax service. So that was the confusion.
Okay. Is there anything that came out of that conversation that triggered like an aha moment for you, saying, oh, we should tweak this so that it becomes clearer?
If it is the same individual, it was the other way. It was aha moment for him. Volunteer stands alone.
Okay. All right. Are you okay with that going to comment 2? Okay.
Hi.
Holding on.
I think it was just a misinterpretation then.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was where I'm looking to get to.
It's on page 38 of the PDF review.
Yeah, to see like, is it like, do we just need like a comma or something to make it clear if we're having this come up more? I mean, we don't need to let the tail wag the dog first. Next comment.
Okay, next comment is one from Daniel Ellis, and here I am not exactly sure what happened here. All I see is a copy and paste, but I don't see an actual ask or analysis. I don't know what to do with that other than I think that is what was received, and we have to provide you with everything that was received, but I don't know that there is much for us to discuss here because I didn't see any question or problem statement. Comment 3 from Ali Bedouin. My apologies for the pronunciation. This is essentially something that I threw in there where, and I'm actually going to look at board council. This was a bit of a gray area for me because we got this communication from Ali in during the time that our rules were exposed. It wasn't clear to me whether it was meant as a comment on the board's exposed rules versus a routine communication, but it does pertain to a topic that is technically open under our rules. So I wanted to err on the side of caution, just in case it was intended as a comment, to pull it into the comment period. All I will say is that we've had a pretty consistent history at the laws and rules and at the board level that we believe in the necessity of having upper division requirements for our accounting courses. So I don't know that there is much to do here. And quite frankly, I'm not even sure whether this was intended as a comment, but I'll leave it at that.
I think it was intended as a comment. I think maybe this person, there was actually the board had a LinkedIn post where someone commented similarly about the upper division. I don't know if it's the same person or not, but I thought it was an interesting comment. But I think my like when you read this person saying I have a BA in economics and an MBA with a focus on finance and accounting, you think that should be kind of nice to have something like that, that wants to get a CPA license. And I think it's very hard to define then what the exceptions are to the 24 upper division. And so I think my point is like, I get it, I understand the comment. I'm not sure that we can really flex to this in a very clean way. Any other comments on that?
I would say, although I also agree, like understand where the comment is coming from. I don't think that 36 upper division quarter hours or the 24 semester hours is too much. So I think that I think what we have in our current rules should stand.
I have to paint. All right. Comment 4 sounds eerily familiar with something that I dealt with before we published the rules. I'm not exactly sure how that showed up in here unless the individual wrote in a second time. But this was something that was corrected before we posted the rules. So if that should be pretty easy to double check because the writer was accurate in terms of diagnosing the error, but I particularly recall that we fixed the error before we exposed the rules. So I'm not exactly sure what happened here.
It's still that way on the document at Pub 7.
Okay, so whatever happened is that the correction didn't take, notwithstanding the effort. Okay, because I remember dealing with this back on whatever it was, December. So that must have been internally Okay, so quite frankly, I remember dealing with the issue and I know that the correction needs to be made. I don't know why that didn't take, because I know we tried to correct it before posting.
Beeping?
Huh?
It's beeping, something's beeping.
I don't.
You're out there?
Can you guys hear it?
Yeah.
It's like a printer.
Oh, it's on.
It sounds like it's over here. I have I cannot tell what direction sounds come from. My husband gives me endless crap about that. To me, it sounds like it's over here, so I'm looking at you, because I'm like, why are you beeping?
Sorry. All right, so Shelley, can you leave the notes that we need to fix item 4, please, before posting? Because I think, when are you working on that?
This afternoon.
After the board meeting, okay. All right, then the next one is a very detailed set of comments from Harry Bowes. There is any thoughts on how you want me to approach this, Haley? So in essence, what I'm trying to figure out a way to summarize, a very detailed feedback from Harry. I think he has some very detailed thoughts around the boundaries between inactive and retired. He would like more permissive language that, essentially, I think the key is really what he wrote on the bottom of page 2, right? Is he wants more language that's clear on what's permitted rather than what's prohibited, not trying to put words in his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, he basically, in my mind, is saying, we have expanded, like, we used to say inactive licensees couldn't do anything in public account.
Yeah.
And now we say they can do kind of non-client facing things that are more in alignment with an administrative function. And he's saying, well, we don't require that client facing work be performed by CPAs. And so if you've never held a license before, you can do this work that someone who has held a license and now to move their status to inactive can now no longer do. And see his point. We discussed the inactive license piece, and there's a slippery slope too on this one, where if you're like, oh, you can do all the things that you want to do in a CPA firm and have an inactive license. Why would anybody have an active license?
Before you didn't allow inactives, right?
Right, not at all.
So, right, so it's at least.
Right. Yeah, if you're gonna do work and you've had a license, you should keep it active. It's kind of like, to me, that's the stance that we ultimately landed on. I mean, we did talk about this significantly, and that was the stance on it. That's like, if you're gonna, you need to, if you're gonna embody kind of the CPA and all of the components of it, like, you need to stay current if you're doing that work. Now, yes, we also have supervision requirements around work that's performed by kind of non-licensees and all of those pieces. So while we don't say if you prepare a tax return, which then has multiple levels of review, you have to have an active license. I mean, we can't do that, because how would anyone get their experience requirements met? But if you had a license, keep it active if you want to keep doing that work. I don't think that it is, yeah.
It very much reminds me of the discussion we had here before, and I think it was respectfully, I think with respect to comments, we got in an earlier rulemaking from Scott Wright, right? Who essentially made the opposite set of arguments, that if we open the door much more to inactive licensure, you're basically going to allow public accounting firms to have one or two active level CPAs running around that take ultimate responsibility, and everybody else is simply inactive inside the public accounting firm. So he kind of, his comments were on the other end of that equation, right? Harry is essentially arguing for more permissiveness, and Scott was already worried about us having gone too far down that road. And I think we're navigate that space. That said, I will only touch on this now, but this will become really important when we do the chart, right? It does start getting into this arena about what the difference is for us now that we're permitting some work by inactives in public accounting firms and some work by retired status folks in public accounting firms. One of the things we're going to get to in the chart is what precisely did the board intend to be in terms of the differences between the two in a public accounting firm setting. And we'll get to that because it's
Inactive and retired?
Inactive and retired.
Oh, I think it's pretty good. So good.
Yeah.
Where did that go?
So that's because we get a ton of questions around this, and it's really, really important. And by we, I actually mean the large we. I don't just mean the board staff we. I also mean OSCPA we. I don't want to put any words in Amanda's mouth. I suspect that OAI might get those questions as well, because there's a lot of folks trying to figure out what's cool with what license type. And it's not, as we started to shift our regulatory framework, those questions are increasing. And we need to make sure that whatever it is we're communicating out is, yes, that is what the board intended to do, and that's what the board wants us to communicate out.
I think this matter, to me, also feels similar to kind of some of the conversations we've had around EPS in terms of what the public understands. And so when somebody thinks that they're having their work done by a CPA, even if their signature line says CPA inactive, they're like, okay, it still says CPA. Like, what does that mean? I don't know that I think it would be tricky for them to read through then the rules. And so
Trying to be careful about what I say. So there is an alternative on page 3, I guess it's 5 of the packet.
3 of Mr. Boyd's comments.
Well, yeah, it's page, the alternative regulatory options, item number 2. So one of the alternatives that he proposes in there is the grace period for inactive licenses. And so the example that I can think of is somebody maybe has been out of the profession for several years, maybe just as an example, like a mom that's been out of work for many, many years and is trying to come back to the profession. So I think the request there for the 180 days is 60 days, a long enough period of time to get all your CPE, get a job, get all of those things. And so I think the request there is to extend that period, because currently our rules are 60 days, which if you're getting hired, you're trying to get back in the workforce. There's only certain periods of time for most CPA firms when they're hiring. They're usually hiring, if you're a tax person, they're usually hiring December, January. So you're getting hired in busy season and you're expected to try to get all of your CPE in that 30 days, 60 days, currently our rules say 60 days, you have a very short window. So by moving it to the 180 days, you have a 6-month period to get your CPE and get through the process with the board to get your license and stuff like that. So I think that that's what that alternative is. I would be open to looking at the alternative.
You're saying something that I hadn't contemplated fully, and it's the notion of temp employment, from the standpoint of, which when I first read Harry's comment about workforce and public interest consideration, again, continued to sort of dig my heels in. I'm like, nope, we're going to be doing the work we need to be. But there is a component that says if you're having trouble finding people during tax season, for example, and you need them for a 3-month window to prep returns, does that person fully need to have 80 hours of CPE, or is, yeah, it's tricky. Mm-hmm.
Because the ultimate goal is to get them back to reinstate their license, right? If they're going to be working in a public accounting firm, I get that. I do want those individuals to be licensed, because from the public's perspective, if they come in, they're going to assume that they're a CPA if they, Google them and see that they've ever had those 3 letters behind their name. But maybe we could consider the alternative that Harry is proposing here, which is giving them 6 months versus 2 months to get licensed.
And then what would happen is, and maybe we would be fine with this, is someone does come on a temporary work assignment for a 4-month window. They would be inactive, continue to be inactive forever. Maybe that's okay.
So to be clear, I think the only place that we have the 2 months window is actually on folks that are coming in, that are out of state and are trying and need an in-state active level license. That's the only 2-month window that we have, and it's a 2 months window that doesn't require them to complete licensure. It just says you need to at least file an application with the board. We have no windows at all.
I think we have a bright
Yeah,
line.
we
that
do
says,
on page 35 of our publication 7. So it's renewal of license.
Yeah, that's renewal.
It's
Oh,
renewal.
that's just renewal. Okay,
So
sorry.
you have until August 29th to renew your license.
Yeah, which we want that.
Yeah,
I think
we
it's a
have
bright
any-
line.
Okay.
We have a bright line. It's like if you're employed in a public accounting firm, you need to have an active level license, or now it's okay for you to have a retired level license as long as you function in the limitations of that role, or you have an inactive level license if we approve those rules, right? And fit within the confines of that. We don't have any grace periods, right? But what we do have now is a permission for 2 license types that didn't previously have permission to work in a public accounting firm, to work in a public accounting firm without having to upgrade to an active level CPA license at all, ever. Not 180 days, not 1,180 days, not ever. So in that sense, we've become a lot more liberal. So I'm not exactly sure yet that I fully get the grace period thing for that scenario, because it's pretty permissive. Because it basically says you can walk into a public accounting firm on day one, not 180, day one, and say you can start work with an inactive level license. You don't have to upgrade it to active, as long as you stay within the limits of what we allow for inactives. Right? And the same is true for the retired CPAs. That is an immediate thing. There's no grace period, there's no waiting period. So I'm trying to understand what exactly the problem here is.
The problem is you can't do this
Client
non-administrative work
They want the
with an
client
inactive
facing.
license.
They want the client-facing
Yes.
work.
And so that's what the
Okay.
purpose is.
Yeah.
It's like if somebody has moved there, in Tanya's example, a mom has just, her license has gone inactive and she's
Okay.
decided, I think I'm gonna come back into the workforce, and decides that on January 1 and gets hired on January 2, she can't actually come in and do work.
Okay.
And so, do we allow for any sort of grace period? Or B, say, if you were planning on going back into the workforce, you need to get your license back in active status,
Could there
which is
be
40 additional hours
a
of CPE,
world
right?
where you apply for the activation, we give the grace period, everything's caught up 180 or something similar?
So just want to note that any of this you couldn't do today.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but it's still a good conversation to have. I'm just saying you can't do
If
it.
anything that we do today, can I rephrase this in a slightly more optimistic?
Yeah.
Please. So we had the comment from Kim Martin earlier. There are certain things we can do.
Yes, there are certain
today
things
in
we can-
terms of fixing
corrections,
things,
if
right?
if it's not a
And
substantial change.
we have a legitimate option, which we actually did during our last rulemaking, where said, oh, this isn't ready for prime time. We can't really adopt these rules. We're gonna need to re-expose this portion of the rule and only adopt that portion of the rule, right? Those options we do have, but what Angie is referring to, in slightly darker terms than I am, is that once we really start getting into writing essentially different policy into rule, we can't just write that policy today and adopt it today. We would have to re-expose the rules, and there are some significant problems given the time pressures that we're under. What we can do is essentially, I think what's happening today, and Angie's, tell me if you're comfortable with that phrasing, right? With the options that are outlined of either saying, hey, we're gonna not adopt that portion of the rule and re-expose, and we can do that for sections, right? We can do some amendments that are essentially corrective in nature, but anything that's policy-wise, we can basically decide either we disagree with the policy proposal saying we don't want to pursue this particular suggestion, but if we agree, we have the option. I'm actually going to now look at Haley because we're going to talk about Jason. One of the Jasons here would essentially get an instruction from the board saying, hey, this was an interesting comment. We would like us to do some policy around this stuff. We like this. Here's some policy direction. Would your distinguished committee please come up with proposals for future rulemaking around this piece? And that we can do, and it would actually be really helpful for the Laws and Rules Committee to understand, hey, the board is interested in this, and here's kind of the framework we're in. Go forth and prosper, do your excellent work, bring us something back.
Yeah.
That we can do. Does that sound a little bit more hopeful? Hopefully.
I don't want to entertain a policy change.
Yeah.
I think a grace period. Apart from you're moving here.
Yeah.
That's special, right?
Yeah.
You may be completely caught up on CPE. Everything's, you're public protection satisfied. We're happy, right? But you can't, like in a dramatic parallel would be like a doctor doing an operation. Like, oh, you have to pass the board within 60 days of doing your operation. That would just, kind of be absurd, right? So when they're doing the work, and they're CPA adjacent, I'd say, as an active or whatever, they should be good to go. They should be ready. So I don't favor a grace period.
Others?
What's your take on, like, if inactive people doing client-facing work?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Logan that, like, if somebody comes in busy season, like, they should be ready to go. I would be concerned if somebody was out for, 10 years and came back and hadn't sort of trued up their CP.
As an inactive licensee, you do have a CPE requirement. Which then we could get into the argument about what's the right number of CPE hours. Yeah.
And you can always take if you're going to go in to do tax work, you always go get your tax license.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter if you're an inactive CPA.
Well, if you held an inactive CPA license, even if you became an LTP, you would still not be able to work for a public accounting firm.
And not do taxes?
No. It's not terrible.
Because you've had the CPA.
That's right.
Yeah, and I agree with that because you're sitting down cross talking to somebody that, like, we pointed out there's confusion among the public. Not a word is said, but they're engaged and they're enthralled with my advice. And we say, okay, thank you, send down the line, we're good. They walk away thinking I'm a CPA.
Yeah.
It's possible. Because I had one, but I got let in the door. Never mind all the other T's and dots that need to be dotted there, I's need to be dotted. That perception could exist. That's what I think. And so they need to be buttoned up a little better.
The wheels are turning there.
Yeah, this is one of those rules I just have never liked.
It's just what?
About the whole inactive license.
Yeah, because that's so. Then I can work for H&R Block. Can I say that? Yeah, with my tax license being an inactive CPA, and have the same conversations and have them still make the same assumptions.
Because they're not a public accounting firm.
Right. So we are protecting the public how? Okay, never mind. Sorry. Bigger discussion.
So I'm just putting this out here. It just, the thought that's crossed my mind during this whole conversation is, so are we punishing people because they had a CPA license and now they can't work anymore?
This is the same. I had this conversation 7 years ago. I feel having flashbacks. Okay.
Yes, we are. We're basically saying you were granted a professional license, and if you want to do this work, you need to keep it active.
Well, and I like Logan's example. I'm pulling from examples that I've seen being on the BOAC, like different things that we've seen, so.
Totally.
Yeah. And let's not forget, before it sounds like we're being harsh, we have done what we can to make reinstatement easier.
Yes.
100%.
There is
It used to be
there is a lot that has been done in our rules around making that a less painful process.
Yep, I'm with everybody else. I rescind my own.
I fully jumped into Logan's camp, so.
And I was not proposing to change the rules, don't worry.
Yeah, do that. I mean, but then, yep, okay. Good. Were there other pieces in Harry's letter that we've glossed over now, or is that the crux of it? I think that's the meat of it, but I want to make sure we didn't miss.
It's a no on the grace period.
Yep.
And I think that what I heard was that the board is comfortable with the prohibition on client-facing work for inactives.
Yes, that's correct.
I don't think there is, unless others feel different, I don't think there's anything else we need to decide on Harry's piece.
I agree. I think that.
I want to talk briefly about Stan Martin, which is the next one in that document. I want to acknowledge, first of all, Stan has been a licensee since 1967, which is frighteningly close to the time that I was born, and is extremely knowledgeable. I actually suspect that Jason might recall this name. Yes, Jason Robinson. This name might ring a bell with you because this person used to be very active in the qualifications committee service for a good while. That I think was his last level of involvement with us board side. But I wanted to just particularly point out that his comments are to me yet again another example of kind of this confusion between retired and inactive. He's raising a really interesting argument, right? Because he's essentially making it, well, inactive CPAs get to do CPE. They have to do CPE. Shouldn't they be able to do the same things, right? Versus the retireds. And he's entitled to his opinion, but I respectfully, I think when the board crafted this framework, what the intention was is that what's the one thing we know about retired level CPE, retired level CPAs? We know that they've had at least 20 years of active level experience as a CPA, that they're deeply grounded in the profession, right? We know no such thing about inactive level CPAs. You can go inactive after a year or two of licensure, possibly even sooner. I'm not even sure whether there's technically a time limit on how fast you can do that, right? And I do think that had some bearing on the policy approach that the board and the LRC felt comfortable taking with respect to, hey, you have effectively somebody who is, kind of an eminence grise of the profession, deeply experienced, right? What type of role should we allow that person to have in a public accounting firm under supervision because they're no longer current, right? versus the inactive piece where we have just very little knowledge other than the licensing status of what the background is of that person.
So I think that in this comment, he's just referring to the fact that it's referring to the wrong OR.
No, I'm already on the next one. sorry.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
already on
sorry.
the next one.
That's
This
very
one, this one here, Shelley and Angie, if you could just double check if we have an error that's correct in here.
It is.
Because if it's an error,
Yeah.
then can you just make a note to fix it before we file?
And
Shelley?
this is from
This is comment
Stan,
number 6.
from Stan Martin.
So
Okay.
if you don't mind just fixing that piece before we file.
And so he says the title inactive licensee status. Is that what I'm fixing?
No, it says the proposed OAR 801005.
It's comment number 6.
I'm there. I'm just looking.
Should now reference a different.
It's a
OAR.
reference issue.
Okay, I was looking at comment 7 by Stan. I see it.
Yeah, it's comment
Okay.
6.
Okay,
So the ask is comment 6 and we're discussing comment 7.
okay.
When there's two comments by the same person. I was confused also.
Comment C.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry. I'm going essentially.
I was thinking down that far.
I'm like, I'm looking right at it.
But
So as much as I love Stan Martin, I'm not sure that I personally think that we have to change course based on that comment. Because I think it's a
Which I
little bit of
have
a
on my
misunderstanding
notes.
of how we got to this distinction between retired and inactive, but that's the board's call. That's just my take.
Going back to public protection, I think retired implies that you're out of date.
Mhm.
You know, that's just kind of known by the public. You see that. Inactive is less clear. And so I think that's part of the thinking as well, perhaps.
I agree.
I appreciate that. And I also, quite frankly, especially now that I have a more national hat on, I keep running into reminders about how unusual our approach is related to inactive status. Because in most jurisdictions that have an inactive status, and not all of them even do, inactive literally means exactly, like literally, what inactive says. You are not active. You're not doing anything. Right? We are the only state who's trying to thread the needle of how active the inactive portion of that word means, right? We were the only ones who are actually trying to navigate that territory and have been trying to navigate it for, many, many different reasons for decades. Sherry.
Can I say devil's advocate here? Is he just trying to get us to change the title there for 801-010-012? Because right now it reads, at least the version that I have, it says inactive status. But then later on, down below, it does refer to inactive license status. I just want to make sure that we're reading the comment
Yeah, 'cause
correctly.
the new section title for 119 is retired licensee status, and then the next one just reads inactive status.
So I'm wondering if he's just referring to, should it say inactive license status?
That's one part of the comment,
Okay.
but when you get really deep into it, he's raising the policy question about halfway into the paragraph. It says one would think that the inactive status CPA should be able to do any accounting financial
Yeah.
report that a retired staff. And that's what I was focusing on, because then he gets into policy
Yeah,
discussion.
I get
But
that.
you're absolutely right. Good catch. That he's also saying, hey, do you want to rename the header?
Which
of
we
this to
can-
make it consistent. And I think that's a very fair point.
Yeah, I think we can totally do that.
We can totally do that. It's a good catch. Thank you, Tanya.
Did you catch that, Shelley?
Um,
Just add the word licensee to the title of that rule.
120.
Okay, let me go back and make sure, because I was trying to pull up the rules to make sure I have that. Okay, so we're back to comment
7.
7.
7, the very first piece, which is the comment, the title of the rule should be inactive licensing
Yes.
status. The board said yes. So we
Okay,
need to make a one-word tweak in the heading.
okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I give a little.
Hey, Andrew, I see that you're still on with us. Are you
Yes.
Are you tracking with us and listening so
Yes.
you can help walk through that with Shelley? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Andrew. I need brains.
This looks an eerily familiar letterhead is coming up on my screen.
It doesn't look familiar to me at all. From now on, I'm never talking fonts, so with Oregon Gas IT doesn't like that marking on the signature, so we can either leave it or I can submit
It's all good.
a proper PDF.
Seems odd that Pennsylvania's bringing in. Like,
I know.
So skipping to the OSCPA piece. Can I just take this one by one?
Yes,
On the-
I would say, understand about policy, don't want to mess up anything tied.
Yeah, so we can't take any more comment from you, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. So we just want, yeah. Yeah, right.
So on the principal place of business piece, right? There are essentially, this goes back to the discussion that the options discussion we had earlier, right? We either have the option of saying, hey, we don't want to proceed with the current proposal. Or we say, LRC, could you take this comment and work on it, in the future and see if we should take a different approach to the principal place of business piece? Without trying to editorialize, I will respectfully say this. I know personally from the conversation that I have with our counterparts, because it just coincidentally happens, not connected to the rulemaking, that there's a lot of discussion that has started to happen nationally around principal place of business and how jurisdictions approach it. And the one thing, without getting into the details for the board, is I can assure you that there is absolutely no consistency between jurisdictions on how that issue is approached. Now, that doesn't take away from the argument that's being made here. The policy argument is essentially, could you align closer with the UAA language, right? Which essentially allows the licensee the power to say, I designate what my principal place of business is. It essentially says the board should go by what it is. I think the oral comment that was made earlier was essentially paraphrasing Sherry, right? Maybe if the board cannot change course on the rules right now, the board could agree to consider the licensee's input on that while we're working on a redefinition. But where is, essentially, without getting into the consulting services piece, because that's a separate issue, what are the thoughts on the board around the principal place of business and changing course to go?
I need someone to talk to me like I'm a sixth grader here and give me a Cliff's Notes version of what the rules, like I think I'm confused, and I'm confused now because of the comment on what we are saying and then what the comment is suggesting. So explain principal place of business to me.
So this was a statutory change that we made.
Okay.
And the statute basically says the same as the rule. It's like a direct almost. And so but the statute says, or you can go further by rule. So the statute says principal place of business means the location of the principal office where a person practices public accounting, or as otherwise defined by rule. But the portion is like where the person practices public accounting.
Okay.
And the whole reason for this in the statute before said exactly what the UAA said.
Where the license performs public accounting services and designated by the person for purposes of substantially equivalent in reciprocity.
And so it didn't work because it talked about substantial equivalency only, and it didn't help us get to where we needed to be on principal place of business for a lot of our cases, because we were like, that's talking about substantial equivalency. We have cases where we need to be able to say, you were practicing in Oregon because you were practicing in Oregon, right? You were working for it. So we needed to change the statute in order to be clear, to make it understand, like, if you were working in Oregon, right, you need a license in Oregon. And so, so that tied it back to substantial equivalency. There's some stuff you can, definitely expand the rule and make for some different options if you want to. Okay. And then
still done. I need an example. So we'll talk about a certain firm in Oregon. And who has employees in other states who work out of their home. How does this apply?
So,
Because I think that's,
yeah, I think that's the bigger picture of like
Right.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I think what this actually comes down to, right, is how the board wants to apply it, and then how, from a regulatory standpoint, how you can effectively do it, right? So like right now, the way it is and the way that we do our applications and our information to the board, like you, right now, if you tell the board, this is where I'm working, right? So now we'll be able to say, this is where you told the board you were working.
Yeah.
So that's where you're working, and that's where you need your license. Versus if you say designated by the person in their own, like, they can basically say, like, when Jeremiah calls them, be like, oh, sorry, no, I changed it today. I work in California now. So it just helps from a regulatory standpoint of being like, we're saying, you know, it's the location where you're practicing accounting. That's where you've required to the board to report where you're working, right? You have to tell them where you're working. And that is your principal place of business. You can change that whenever you want, right? Like you could go online and update your whatever, but.
so if I'm sitting in my home in Vancouver and I would fill out when I move next door to mine, I fill out I say my principal place of business, is it Vancouver, Washington? Because I work out of my home, even though I'm part of a firm that has offices in Bend and Corvallis, Eugene, I guess we go.
So I think this is like sort of a bigger discussion that we probably need to have on how we want to effectively apply it, right? Which is what I think the bigger question is like, how are we doing that? So there's a difference of somebody who is a licensee, right? And they have to report to us where they're working, right? Versus an out-of-state person who isn't having to report to us because they aren't licensed here. So say you're in Washington, working in Washington, and you're.
By working, we mean clicking buttons and typing.
Right, yeah. So it's like, so the upside to this definition, right, is if you're actually working from home, but your firm is here, right? It's easier for us to say, no, you're working here.
Yeah.
So you need to be licensed here, right? And there's different ways that we can apply that or like whatever, and we can expand on the rule on that or whatever you guys want to do to like sort of get there. But that allows you to do that right now versus, letting the person say, like, and if you say designated by the person, they can be like, well, I don't designate that as mine. I designate the Washington location
The
as
issue
mine.
is not how principal place of business is applied. The issue is that we are saying, we'll decide, not you.
I mean, to some extent, right? Like you have the rule ability, right? Like that was, one of the things we talked about a lot when all of these was like, when looking at this term was like, we wanted to make sure you guys could expand it and contract it if you needed to, right? Mm-hmm. But that right now, all the rule does is take what the statute says and puts it there. So if you guys want to look at doing it differently or like allowing for more, you could go back to that. You could say means that as designate, you could go back to, you could absolutely add that to it, right? Like that, the statute allows for you to do that. The hard part again is that it comes back from a regulatory standpoint of like designated by the person. How? What does that mean? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And does it mean that we get to ignore the facts, right? And this gets super noodly, right? Because to go back to your scenario, right? You're in Vancouver, right? If you're working for an Oregon firm through an Oregon branch, right? We would consider your principal place of business not to be Vancouver, but to be Oregon. Now, next scenario version is that assumes that you're an actual employee of the firm, right? What happens if you're a 1099 employee, right? That's a whole other one. And then next scenario is you're still in your Vancouver home and it turns out you're a 1099 employee for 5 different public accounting firms and you're essentially, all over the place and you have essentially a remote work arrangement. You're not on anybody's direct payroll and you're working for 5 different public accounting firms as a essentially part-time employee. I would make an argument that will probably, those facts would shift to, I think you're effectively practicing public accountancy out of your home, right? But that's the part where it gets moving.
And then additionally, in an APS environment, if we say, that's what I'm gonna say. If when, which we've experienced, people suggesting, firms suggesting, oh no, the tax arm, the consulting arm of our business, their principal place of business is in Seattle, but all of the employees are working in Portland, but their home base is Seattle. So therefore, we're not doing tax work in Oregon. If there's some gaming that's possible there by leaving it at the discretion.
So where do you want to go with this?
I don't know. Where does anybody else want to go with it?
Does anybody else think the LRC should look at it?
No.
This is the
So our role, and here's why, I'm like, our role is to protect the public. It's difficult to protect the public if somebody's gonna say, nope, today I feel like I'm working in Idaho. I have 3 homes, I'm working in Idaho, I'm not working in Oregon, even though they may be in Oregon, or they may not be in Oregon. If they're working for an Oregon firm, I want to be able to protect the public by having them under our rules.
Does anyone disagree with that motion?
I make a motion to accept it.
Well, we're not gonna move. She said notion, right?
You said notion.
Notion, not motion. We're not
I agree. We should not letting people willy-nilly choose their practicing. Do we feel this definition is sufficiently descriptive for us to be able to judge where someone's principal place of business is?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, what's a principal office? Like, I mean, you could go. Yeah, there's definitely probably some room to expand on that and ask the LRC to look at that.
So maybe not of anything. I could imagine like the plurality of your client work or something like that.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about public protection, so we care about what the client is.
Yeah.
So, but for a later date.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I think that's right.
So am I hearing this one is a referral over for further consideration to the LRC, this particular part of the comment?
Not that part of the comment.
Designated by the person.
No, not designated, but Logan saying like, look at like, what is the principal office? Like looking at like, does this role, and the hard part too, right? Like until we're actually like applying it to some cases, right? Like we might not necessarily like see if it's easier, like sometimes you actually need a case, right? To kind of like help work through it. But, you can send it back to the LRC just to sort of like look at that, to see if like, is there a way to make this clear? But sometimes making it more, makes it, there's always like, so just looking at like whether or not it does what we want it to do.
Do we need a motion for purposes of?
No, I think it just can be direction.
Just simply direction to LRC to take a further look at if we can take the place of business thing and make it clearer. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that essentially where we're landing?
Yes.
Be sitting in our seats too, so hand it off to whoever is the next chair.
Then the next piece was the defining professional to include consulting services, and essentially the suggestion is to remove it. I mean, that's a pretty clear.
It's in the statute.
And so it's in the statute, so we can't. So there is not even a policy discussion.
Right.
Here. So I think that, I don't know, Quinn, if that's on your radar, because I think this is the first time we have to do it under the new rules. Well, I shouldn't say rules. Let me clarify it. Under the new governor's expectations for rule transparency, we're going to have to publish a document that literally goes through every single comment that we have received, identify whether we've changed the rules on that as part of the comment, or whether we didn't, and if we didn't, why not, or kind of what the follow-up is. So we're going to have to literally create a chart in all of this. Here's, what we just discussed, for example, would fall under, we referred this over to the LRC for further consideration in future rulemaking, right? On this one, that we just, under the consulting services, no action because we don't have statutory authority, right? So we're going to have to essentially at the staff level, pull together a chart that we're going to have to publish in that transparency section that you set up on the website to help us deal with the governor's expectations on transparency. So just trying to connect those dots here. The contents you don't have to come up with. We're going to have to deal with that at the staff level, but just know that there's a clock ticking on us posting that chart. Okay, mobility regulations. What's the ask here? We understand the omission of subsection 1 that eliminates on mobility except for references. So that's not really a disagreement. That's really more of what you include in rulemaking rather than what you include in terms of text of the rule, in terms of level of duplication versus not. Not sure.
The ask is to leave it, to keep it though.
The ask is to keep language that we're proposing to remove. Does that cause any issues, Angie, from your perspective, legal perspective, that we can do that?
Unstrike something.
To unstrike it?
I guess I don't follow this. I was like trying to I'm not sure. Because
I need to pull up the underlying doc.
So the proposed draft removes section 1.
Section 1 says an individual whose principal place of business is not in this state, who has an active license by another jurisdiction and who meets substantial equivalency may practice in this state.
And I'm sorry, what does the draft, the proposed rule say?
Proposed rule strikes it.
Strike that whole thing.
Because of the reference to substantial equivalency.
Right.
That's no longer a defined term.
Well, we do define substantial equivalency, just define it differently.
Okay.
SB 797.
Well, right. Yes.
So this is on 801.010.0080. Just go down to that. Oh boy. So we're close. There we go. Oh, because it takes out subsection 1, what used to be subsection 1. That's the issue. And they're trying to essentially say, can you keep that language?
Mm-hmm.
So then we would move, because the reference in section 1, the reference ORS is no longer work.
Yeah.
And would need to be replaced with
yeah.
797.25.5 section 1 that we do have lower down.
It's defined low, so I feel like it's still there. It's just in a different spot.
Because there's 2 elements. There's you're in good standing, but that's covered elsewhere. And you have substantial equivalency, but that's also covered elsewhere. So I feel like it's already addressed.
Do we have anything specifically in the rules that say someone from another state can practice in Oregon without a reciprocal license?
Individuals who hold a valid CPA license in another state and wish to obtain a license in Oregon must.
Yeah, it's a third element. Maybe it's not elsewhere.
So
one is allowed for in statute, period, right? It's already, by removing it here, you're not changing the fact that you can do it.
Because that's elsewhere.
Yeah.
So Jeremiah, I'm trying to remember what you just said. I think did you just talk about essentially mobility or did you talk about reciprocity? Because this is the section that we're in.
The section is about,
Exclusively about reciprocity.
right. And before we had that first clause that said you have mobility. If you want to come in, then you can get reciprocity.
There's
nothing in the rule.
Explanatory thing at the front that says mobility exists, and if that doesn't, but if you require a license, here's what the requirements are.
So we don't have anything in a rule now that explicitly points out mobility.
Okay. Even
But
though we
it's-
have it by statute.
Yeah,
Is it in statute?
yes. Mobility has its own statute. Completely.
Is that an issue to have something in statute but not in rule?
I mean, so I think it's sort of like,
The word mobility.
it doesn't say mobility, but it's there. It's, I can tell you the statute reference, hold on. It doesn't use the term mobility. It's like holders of licenses issued by other states. 153.
Okay, yes, I see it.
So different interpretations on that, like whether or not like you want it in rule. We could have a mobility rule, so you could ask the LOC to do a mobility rule, but the mobility rule would be just essentially a copy and paste of the statute. I think it is, I think that to have that portion of the rule under reciprocity, it's sort of confusing because it's not like it says, like, it's not like saying like you can do this or this. So like clarifying that was just reciprocity is what that rule is about, right? Like this rule is just about reciprocity versus like your ability to practice by mobility, which is 673153. So you do not have to. The statute always trumps, right? So you do not have to, but some boards like to do it because they like the clarity of having somebody, whatever, Would you say that everything that we have in statute is also in rule? No, right? Like the majority of our statute is not in rule because it's duplicative. So that is totally up to you guys about whether or not you want to make a rule that clarifies it. That didn't go away, but it doesn't go away.
So the concern is maybe people are confused. They read this and they don't understand that mobility.
They don't think that they think that we took mobility away, but we didn't because it's still there in statute.
Yeah.
So the only way that we could fix that, I think the recommended way to fix it at the rule level is to write a separate section on mobility in rules. So folks that are using the rules as their primary reference still see it clearly in there, but it wouldn't change anything in terms of mobility, just the same way that us taking that language away doesn't remove mobility. It will just be a clarity.
I was gonna say, it seems like overkill, but we could throw it back to the Laws and Rules Committee and have them just consider it. Just consider if it should be in both places. I don't think it changes anything for today. I think that this section is specifically for applications for reciprocity.
Okay.
But we could at least let them have the discussion if it should be in both places. I mean, I agree with your comment, Haley, that it probably is overkill, but if we're finding that we're getting lots of questions or whatever, maybe we do need it in both places, but I don't think it goes here.
Great. Okay.
Sorry, Jason.
All right. And then the very last piece, and then we're done with the written comments, is the employee stock ownership plan. This is the almost Shakespearean sounding questions: to be or not to be, and instead to have a stock ownership plan. So thoughts on the Shakespearean question in this piece?
Aren't we saying that an owner can be a employee stock ownership plan? I mean, it is a legal entity.
The statute right now says all owners who are not licensed must be active individual participants or affiliated entities or have an ESOP. And the rule says an owner can be an ESOP.
The rule is correct. The statute is not, in my mind.
I think you can interpret it. By changing it, you could interpret it that way, right? Like the have versus
the owner, which is an ESOP, has an ESOP, which is itself.
And then it to be.
Yeah.
So we're not in conflict with the statute.
Okay, so
So can we can we leave it as is?
is this an explanation thing or is this we need to tweak the language thing?
Or do we need to do nothing? Because it says a non-licensee owner can be an employee stock ownership plan, which is correct.
Yeah.
A non-licensee owner can have an employee stock ownership plan.
That is also correct.
Yes, it's also correct. But
So I think what I'm hearing from you is that we could clarify it in rule further down the line.
yeah, I don't think we need to. No, I think the rule is right. I think the rule is clear. To me, the rule is clear. The statute's where it's a little fuzzy and.
Yeah.
The
So
statute
when
is
we
fuzzy, the
open
rule is
up
clear.
statutes, potentially
Correct.
make it match the rule, but
Table for future.
yeah, table for
Yeah.
way future, like it's not.
Yeah, that gets dicey opening that.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But the next time we do it, maybe just try to line.
All right. So I think we're through the written comments, which overlap with the only oral comment received. So, Madam Chair, I think we have identified a couple of topics that we referred, I think there were one or two topics that we referred for further consideration to the LRC.
Correct.
I think 2 or 3 corrections that are on the list for you to make that we identified as either reference errors or other things. So I do believe that when you're ready to call for a motion, because we are effectively making these technical corrective amendments, I do think the motion language we need to say as amended. But I think we're ready.
Great.
I think you can call for a motion at this point, and we have, lots of people joining us for what comes next. So
Great. Do I have a motion to adopt the rules as amended?
So moved. Jason Robinson.
Seconded, Tanya Moffett.
Any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Logan Seal, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes. Woohoo! Always a heavy lift. Big thanks, Jason and LRC, on all of that work, and super appreciate all the comments that came in. It's so great to have more brains on it. So everyone that commented, thank you. Okay. The explanatory matrix, inactive status, retired status, and lapsed
I'll get you your printed
status.
copy.
Oh, that would be lovely, thank you. We're gonna discuss that in executive session?
what?
Yes? No, okay.
Not the report out, after the report out.
Okay, okay, we're going to do. Okay, so, we're gonna look at this matrix and talk about it.
Can I be annoying and ask for a printed copy of that as well?
What's that?
Can I be annoying and ask for a printed copy?
Yeah, anyone else? Yeah, absolutely. And I can print out, I'll just print out a few.
What are we doing with this?
So the matrix is essentially, this could become a very quick thing because it's like if everybody has had a chance to look at it, it could become as simple as, yes, this captures what the board's intent is, or, hey, I saw a flag here. I don't think that that's what the rules say, or this gave me some additional thoughts that maybe we got it wrong. We just want to make sure that this is currently what you have in your packets with that chart.
I was not able to open that, and so I would like to spend a couple of minutes.
Oh, please.
reviewing.
Let's do that.
If that's okay. was unable to. Hence why I have this printed copy.
That was in the supplemental upload for those of you that are for it. I think it came out on Tuesday, supplemental upload.
Yeah, the digital one. Anyone else want
This is under Pub 8B, matrix on inactive, retired, and lapsed status. I think we have a number of members of the LRC that are joining us for an upcoming agenda item. And I think they might get a little, as folks are reviewing this, slightly green with envy, because here we get to operate in what we're trying to, like, essentially as clear as possible direct language on what this actually means versus the rules language that the LRC deals with on an everyday basis. So welcome feedback.
A clarifying question?
Yeah.
For purposes here. So we're reviewing this document to see if it corresponds to the understanding
Yes.
and intent.
Yes.
Is this ever going to be a public facing document?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Public facing intends to be published out widely, and quite frankly, I expect it to be pretty much, on all of our staff's desks, because we get lots of questions around this. I suspect that there will be copies floating around OSCPA, because OSCPA tends to get calls around this in OSCPA. And I suspect OAIA is no different, that there are sometimes calls that come in around those pieces here. And I think everyone is in a very cooperative space trying to get the same message out to everybody. So it's really helpful to discuss this in a public meeting and make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're all giving out the same message. So it's super valuable, not just for the board, but also for the partners that are on the call.
Okay, can we just take like a minute?
Yeah.
Actually, why don't we can we go through this section, sort of section by section?
Yeah.
So the first section is ability to practice public accountancy. The inactive definition to me is confusing. Maybe because when I was reading it, I'm not thinking about the fact that it's under the ability to practice public accountancy. But to me, it sounds like if I were to read that, I would read that an inactive license can do anything in a public accounting firm that a brand new college graduate could do.
Which is not true.
Which is not true.
Yeah, that should be corrected. I thought we corrected that the other day.
So I think some wordsmithing
I
around.
thought that we took that out.
I thought so too.
Oh,
I thought so too.
That sounds like you'll have a different language with that.
To the next board meeting?
I thought we took that out. This is the.
Maybe we only changed it in the employment in an accounting firm section.
Or maybe. Okay, right. So the next section says.
Yeah, we didn't align
I
it
see.
between
May
the two.
provide.
Maybe just title the ability to practice public accountancy in a non-public accountancy firm title would be helpful, right? Like the first one is ability to, like this one's about working in a firm. This one is not about working in a firm. So maybe we just need to clarify the title and then.
Ability to practice public accountancy.
And it says me working on public accounting.
Right.
Yeah, right, which should have, unless, well, if you're.
So I think we just need to take out that first sentence. Right.
Or the whole section. Because employment in a public accounting firm addresses all the things.
Yeah, but I do think it's good to have the permissive language, right? That because we have historically allowed inactives to do the full rate pretty much if they are working in the private sector.
Sure.
Those questions,
For a single.
which is where we point them, to the or the FAQs that are on the website, and then direct them to you.
Right, because it's part of the
As
request.
defined, blah, blah, here.
So we need to take out the first sentence under ability to practice public, at least for now. Under the inactive description of what's allowed under ability to practice public accountancy, we forgot to do that somehow.
The second
very first sentence that you're
makes
looking at.
sense.
We're taking this out.
Very first one that says may work in a public accounting firm only in the capacity of non-licensed staff and only perform tasks allowed to non-CPAs, because
Yep, agreed.
good catch. Thank you.
Any other comments on that first section? Employment in a public accounting firm. Makes sense to me.
So this one, I just want to point out that I'm glad if it makes sense to folks here, but it is probably the clearest statement that we have anywhere that the board is thinking about the scope of what is allowed for retired status and inactive status in a public accounting firm differently, that they're not the same. And that's one of the core things that I just want to make sure we validate. So I'm glad to hear that it makes sense to you, because that I've always thought we gotten some pretty clear, hey, this isn't exactly the same for us in terms of what we're allowing them to do.
Are the terms professional services and licensed services interchangeable? On those two, inactive and retired. May not perform any licensed services. Okay, I think I understand that. May not perform any professional services. So are those interchangeable?
I don't think so. I think licensed services is
What I can do is CPA all everything.
Yep. And professional services would be, may not perform. It's sort of the idea of the client facing.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the operative word here is for clients.
Right.
So we're trying to distinguish. We want them to be able to work for the firm, but we don't want them to be involved in the client portion of the piece. So that's essentially kind of what we talked about in different ways. We want to be able to finally get to the place where we allow actives to say, you can run the HR department, you can run to the data analytics, you can run the IT department, you can be our recruiter, but you're not going to have a role in services that are going to be provided to clients.
Okay.
That's I think what we thought where we were at the board at the LRC level, which is different than for the retireds.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. I see it.
Is the lapsed thing right under employment in a firm?
Any practice or holding out is prohibited.
No, the allowed part.
No, it's not. There's just no employment allowed at all.
I thought we changed that one too yesterday.
This is the right version. The second piece that
Something out at a later date.
They print out the wrong one.
I second that motion. You guys, okay.
Well,
You didn't-
is there a motion to adopt this that's going to?
No.
I don't
This is just to discuss it.
This is just to discuss it.
Okay.
Just need to fix that piece.
All right.
I don't know how
Go
that
to, let
happened.
me see if I
And then it
can.
can get published.
Yeah, I like the,
Yeah.
Like
the format and everything. It's nice to see those things together like that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Hmm.
Yes, no, yes, no.
Everything else looks good to me.
Striking that whole section. It may not work, under lapse.
Which one? Where are you?
Under the employment and public accounting firm.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say,
We're just cross off that section.
Cass, a likely dumb question, otherwise known as a Haley question, apparently, because you keep doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're never dumb, you know. The ownership part. So not allowed to own the CPA part. But you have non-CPAs owning a minority role, minority portion.
Correct.
Right, so they can't even like be a minority owner.
I've raised this question before and I got a pretty firm, yes, that's intentional, and a no.
Yes, that's intentional.
Okay.
But
Ray has a question.
it warms my heart, Logan, that I was not the only one stumbling over that.
Okay.
Ray has a question.
Ray has a question. Ray, hi Ray.
Yes, I'm looking at this, all the way down where it talks about renewal and reinstatement. Where it says annual renewal of retired status or annual renewal of inactive status. Isn't it a
It's biannual.
biannual review?
It's biannual. We don't have any annual renewals in our office.
You need to update that language. Yep.
Good catch.
It's
Yes.
just a
thanks,
small
Ray.
item, but
Thanks, Ray. No, that's a good one.
Or we can just say renewal of retired status is
Right.
required, whatever. I don't even have to say it's biannual.
Okay.
Just take that specification out.
Awesome. Thank you. This is super helpful. It'll be a great
Awesome. Thank you for
resource.
the feedback.
Thank you for your time and effort. To board staff, I don't know, everybody.
So you'll see on the public agenda that there are two separate executive sessions for today, just kind of to help with the flow of the meeting. So I am now adjourning the public session of the board to enter executive session under authority of ORS 192.660(2), consideration of records exempt from disclosure and counsel advice. This is State of Oregon Board of Accountancy Chair Haley Lyons. I'm calling the public session of the Board of Accountancy back to order. It is January 29th, 2026, and the time is 12:08 p.m. The same persons previously present in public session are present again, so I will not conduct a new roll call. Everyone agrees with me? I think it's all the same people. Great. Okay. But we have some administrative matters to take care of with respect to the LRC meeting. Angie Hunt.
Sorry, I was looking at. So yes, I think our LRC wants to amend their meeting agenda and notice to allow for the public session. Is that, board chair, is that what you would like to do?
Yes, ma'am.
So would you like to call for a motion to amend your agenda and meeting notice to allow for a public session?
I would like to call for a motion as stated by council.
And
So move Sherry McPherson. I'll a second.
Amanda Fels will second.
Amanda Feld second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Vote. Sherry.
Sherry McPherson, aye.
Felds.
Amanda Fels, aye.
Where's Joe? Ray Johnson.
Ray Johnson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye. Motion passes.
You?
all right, I will now amend the notice and I will send it over to Quinn.
Great. Thank you. Discussion of potential APS PE related legislative concepts, language, and next steps. Martin and Angie.
So,
Take those.
folks, I simply need a little bit of direction based on where we are. We have I just had the email up with the deadlines here, and I'm trying to get back to, but of course it disappeared on me. But basically, we have two published deadlines so far. One is at the end of March, where I have to notify the governor's office of, which basically means also DAS and the governor's office know what legislative concepts this agency intends to pursue in the 2027 session. Right. The next deadline after that, and Angie, this is different than before, so listen up, this will impact you and DOJ broadly, is that we already have a deadline on May 29th to submit agency proposed legislative concepts for review by Leg Council on May 29th, which is much sooner than in prior cycles. That used to be like a August 1 type, an August 1 type deadline. What that means for us practically, as we're continuing to develop language, is that I will ask for that deadline for us to be moved by 1 week to June 5, which may connect to you, for those of you that recollect our board meeting calendar, that essentially it would give us an opportunity on June 4 to have any further discussion around language specifics with the board on June 4, so that then we can, proceed with follow on with legislative council on June 5. But it does mean the process is becoming ever more front loaded, and I will need to be able to have something to say, whether it's on a hypothetical generic concept that simply says, Martin, put something in the door that's a placeholder for fixing any technical problems that didn't get caught in Senate Bill 797 2025, or whether it's a Martin, please proceed with at least putting in, but it's even if it's without language, a hold for a concept to the APS PE. So that's where we're at on the timelines that we're aware of that have been published. And therefore, Madam Chair, I would appreciate under this agenda item some direction from the board as to what all I should put in the process that's within the wishes of the board.
I don't understand the question.
So the question is, I cannot go in and submit a legislative concept when the board says that's not what we don't agree.
Got it. Okay, great.
If I didn't make that clear.
Yeah. So I think that the discussion is around kind of a proposed draft legislative concept that we have in front of us and what tweaks need to be made to it or not. Do we feel like this is the correct direction we want to go?
Jason Robinson, I do believe we're heading in the right direction. I would definitely give the executive director.
I agree. Do we need, is this something we would make a motion to?
You would want to make a motion to initiate the legislative concept issuance on the private equity language, with the, sort of addition of with the ability to, what's the word I'm looking for? With direction from the board. So just changing that, looking at the, who's exempted language.
And also remaking a motion about Senate Bill 797.
That's a separate one.
It's a separate, yeah, two separate, yeah.
So, yeah.
No, so I think you would Haley, would you like to call for a motion to provide Martin with direction to submit initial language regarding the legislative concept on private equity APS structure, business organization registration requirements?
Yes, I would.
You would like to call for that?
So moved. So moved by Tanya Moffett.
Thank you.
Robinson, last second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this matter? Okay, let's take a vote.
Logan Steele, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Great, motion passes. Keep on keeping on.
Okay, and then Madam Chair, could I respectfully ask for a motion to put in a legislative concept for potential technical cleanups of errors that occurred in Senate Bill 797 final language?
Yes, I would like to call for a motion about that.
Jason Robinson, so moved.
The magic two-word motion.
Yes.
Tanya Moffett, second.
Great, perfect. Yes, as we are aware, there's some cleanup that needs to happen there. Let's take a vote.
Logan Seal, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Great, thank you. Woo-hoo. Okay, report out from the LRC committee. Sure. I can take a bite.
Perfect timing. Thank you.
It's the waitress rule.
In your work material, as requested by this board, we have, thank you, I'm glad Ray is still on, thanks to Ray's heavy lifting, we have a proposed response to the NASBA white paper. You've had an opportunity to read, it's been back and forth with the LRC committee. The LRC, Ray had an initial draft, and then after additional information came about some of the differences in structuring that are happening now with APS, including the one that was brought by a public member of a firm where there is just one CPA in the attest term. That's it. And by the way, I'm repeating what was said in that meeting. The work is being done outside and the structure is form and not a lot of substance. Ray went back and modified the document that you have. And we present that for your consideration and if appropriate, submission to NASBA. We have not crafted a response to AICPA's white paper yet. Extremely complex. And the response date is later. So, Madam Chair, it's your report.
Not to say this wasn't complex in and of itself.
Don't disagree, but the AICPA's got to beat in our view. In complexity. Yeah, some nice diagrams.
Right. Do we need to do anything with that?
Make a motion.
Make a motion of whether or not you like what we did or whether you're giving our homework back and telling us to do it over again.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry. So we need a motion for Martin to submit the LRC recommended response.
Any discussion?
Any
You do it after the motions.
Oh, okay.
we
Jason
can
Robinson,
discuss beforehand. Whatever you want to do.
I'll make a motion. Jason Robinson, I make a motion to let Martin submit the response as stated.
Thank you.
I second that. Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I think it was excellent. I appreciate the efforts.
All goes to Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Oh, right.
All goes to Ray.
Okay, great. Let's take a vote on that. Logan.
Logan Seal, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Okay. That deadline was extended to February 28th, but I think we can get it in. Yeah. AICPA peak exposure draft on ethics rule changes related to APSPE. As Jason mentioned, there is an AICPA webinar right now. I imagine they'll post that if anybody wants to watch it. There is a NASBA webinar on February 4th. Yeah, so.
I would absolutely encourage folks to, first of all, I will, if anybody wants the link to the AICPA webinar, they have just informed me by email this morning that they will make the recording of today's webinar available. So that is essentially something that will not give you CPE, but it's a free way of accessing the AICPA information. They have other versions of this that you can sign on to for AICPA members that are essentially for a fee, but then you also get CPE. There is that. And then, but what I would really like to emphasize is that we have that NASBA version of, that is occurring on February 4th, which I think there will also be a recording.
Yes.
We heard a little bit of a preview of that at the board meeting. And it was, I think it's fair to say it was very well received, very succinct, very focused on kind of breaking out and identifying kind of what the 4 or 5 really most critical issue areas are that we need to focus on from the regulator side. So I would highly recommend folks attend this, and I can also shoot that link out broadly. And I hope that maybe that's what Ray's question is about. Ray has
my comment is there's an incredible amount of technical detail in this exposure draft. I'd encourage you to watch the recording of the AICPA as well as NASBA. I think you need to hear it from several sides and then jump into the exposure draft yourself. There's just an awful lot of weeds. When I first read it, I thought, how on the earth would I try and teach this? And that's kind of my bailiwick. There's a lot of heavy lifting here. So take advantage of both those resources and any other resources you might have.
On that note, we need to schedule a special board meeting on like April 29th or 30th.
Yes. So in essence, Madam Chair, as long as you and the board are comfortable with LRC, as we did with the white paper, taking on kind of the first really heavy lifting deal, drafting a response, if we're good with that, then it leads to that question of LRC has a meeting scheduled on the 28th of April to really work through this stuff. But that does mean that we have a very short window before that April 30th deadline. So that's why the request, it's not me trying to be mean, but it's essentially trying to juggle between what the LRC can pull off with gratitude to the LRC. And then we have essentially only 2 more days before the deadline on the 30th. So it has to be because of that, either on the 29th or the 30th. And I apologize for that, but that's.
We have a complaints committee meeting on the 30th.
That may not matter. I'm saying it will matter, but
we could just do it in the afternoon
it's
too.
Just when we have only 2 options for the board, we need to see what works for the board and then go from there. It's unfortunate.
Did you say the
otherwise
LRC meeting is the 29th or
28th? The LRC meeting is on the 28th.
Okay.
So if board members can make it on the 29th, that's great for staff because then we don't have to navigate conflicts between BOEC and the board, right?
And you're thinking like a noon time frame?
Like, yeah, if we do another noon, because that's usually what's easiest for folks to fit on the calendar in between when we don't have a regular meeting time.
I have a conflict until 12:30.
Okay.
Do 12:30 on April 29th.
Okay. Or we could do, which is a little harder, the afternoon, like after BOEC is over on the 30th, but then essentially have an immediate turnaround time.
Well, let's just see. Does anybody have a conflict on the 29th at 12:30?
No.
Right.
We do 12:30, and then can we do, if necessary, does it work for folks if we do up to 90 minutes? Because this is potentially pretty heavy topics in there.
Yep.
Can we do potentially up to 90 minutes, 12:30 to 2?
Yep, I've heard.
or special board meeting. I know Quinn is rapidly taking notes because you're about to start asking to send out the notice. Okay, 12:32 on the 29th. An amazing group. Thank you.
Yes.
32 p.m. Okay. Awesome. You just got us through the entire.
We don't know the time of the February 4th webinar yet, I don't think.
I actually believe that we do. Give me just a very quick moment because I already signed up for it, so I can cheat and look on my own calendar. I remember February 4th is a particularly full day for me. It is Pacific time at noon to 1. So it's straight during our lunch hour.
And Jessica is running that.
Yes, that's my understanding that CPA Jessica Luttrell, an employee of NASBA, will be running that webinar.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on to new business.
So, Madam Chair, I just want to ask a little bit of a strategy question. We have, I think, one matter. This is a little bit of a tough one. But I don't want to slow us down in terms of getting stuff done, but I do know that we have one matter in our regular executive session where somebody's waiting.
Let's do that.
Essentially to try to get for us to take action.
Mm-hmm.
Before we do that, are you okay with us doing the switcheroo?
Yeah.
Or
doing new business, we'll skip ahead to executive session and then we'll come back to new business.
Yeah.
Yep.
Would you mind?
Nope. Not mine.
So this gentleman doesn't have to wait much longer.
I'm now adjourning the public session of the board to enter our second executive session under authority of ORS 192.660(2)(F)(H). Consideration of records exempt from disclosure and counsel advice. The time is now 12:27 p.m. Staff is removing the guests from Zoom and any guests in the boardroom. Bring the public session of Board of Accountancy back to order. It is Thursday, January 29th, 2026, and the time is 12:41 p.m. There is a slight change in the people that are present. Ray Johnson did not return into this public session, so let that be known. Everybody else is the same.
Anybody in the waiting room?
Everybody in the waiting room. So we are going to do item 13, motions on cases heard in executive session. And then we'll skip back to new business since we just finished executive. So I'm entertaining motions at this time.
Jason Robinson, I make a motion for case 25-017 for sufficient evidence of OAR 801-010-0130 and 2 lapse license.
I would second that. Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion? Take a vote.
Logan Seal, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Amy Lyons, aye. Thank you. Passes.
I make a motion for case 25-019 for insufficient evidence of OAR 801-030-0030 and 1 for records not provided to the client within 60 days.
I would make a second. Tanya Moffett.
Great. Any discussion? Take a vote.
Logan Seal, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Amy Lyons, aye. Still have the vote. 3
Motion passes.
Motion passes.
I make a motion for case 2025-INQ-036 and case 2025-INQ-037 to close.
I would second that motion. Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, take a vote.
Logan Seal, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Okay, motion passes. Any other motions?
For the date.
Oh, yes, yes.
I make a motion for having an emergency board meeting on April 29th at 12:30 p.m.
I would second that motion. Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion? Vote.
Logan Steele, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Amy Lyons, aye. Motion passes. Coordinate on that day. Okay, on to new, no other motions? I don't think. Okay, good. So I should ask. All right.
We get to settlements.
That's it. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, we're circling back to item 11, new business, part 2 of 2. The first couple of items are informational. Anything specific anybody wants to say or talk about either we already talked about the NASDA response to AICPA peak exposure draft on tax services. Forget that.
That's just informational. I don't know that we've really ever discussed it, but I just want to make sure folks know.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm sharing is because it's coming from the revenue department is that tax professional survey, because it might be of interest in terms of how folks responded, but I don't know if there's anything for us to discuss. And then I am obligated to make sure that board members know that there is an Ethics Commission public meeting law training on February 24. I believe that I created a document related to this, but if not, I will simply say that at this point, there isn't a direct mandate on board members to attend that training. It is in that space that in state government language, governor's office and DAS and OGEC would call strongly encouraged. All right, so I wanted to just share that. If you want more information on that, I will happy to provide that. It should hopefully sit in your workday piece, but if not, I can't see what you see in your workday accounts as board members in terms of requested or recommended trainings. So I wanted to raise that awareness here.
How many of us log into that very often? On it.
Okay, the next item is around delegation of authority to the executive director.
So I want to just very briefly bring that up. So there's two things that are going on here. One is that it is generally good practice for a board to review what authority you have delegated to me on a regular basis. We haven't been doing it since I joined the board. It seems like sometimes yesterday, but it's actually now almost 4 years ago. And so it's time to re-review it. Now, what you have in your documents, which is a little bit part of the technical lack of knowledge that I have, is a Word document, not a PDF, because I wasn't smart enough how to figure out saving a PDF without killing the strike-throughs. So I wanted you to see a clear document. It's okay to be humble. See a clear document that says, here's what you agreed to in May, and here are the tweaks. Now, two of the tweaks that you actually see are really straightforward because it's really about, hey, we no longer have a qualifications committee. We can now, essentially remove that piece out. And there were, I think, 2 references in there, right? However, there is, and I'm speaking from memory only, Angie, you may need to help me with this. There is actually one other tweak, and that I'm going to ask the board to make. There's a little bit of a sensitive history around it because I originally thought of it as an error that had slipped in on the original draft back in May, right? Because if you look at item 8, which I believe is on the first page, and I'm doing this from memory, I don't have it in front of me. At item 8 on the first page, you actually see language in there that looks like it's cool, but if you really go in the depth of it, it appears to give me authority to waive late fees. And the problem with that is that the board has no authority to waive late fees. The board only has authority to waive essentially certain forms of CPE requirements and CPE penalties. And in essence, when you're talking about a delegated authority form, at the risk of kind of saying it a little too pointedly, you really can only delegate to me authority to actually have.
But it says you can waive late fees pursuant to board rule. There just is no board rule
Yes.
on the late fee.
Delegating authority to do nothing.
Well, okay, but here's the problem, right? We do get calls once in a while where people get really upset about a late fee and they want me to waive it. It actually happens. Frankly, without trying to get into the history of what may or may not have happened with this document prior to my return to the board, right? It actually puts me in a really awkward position if there is a document out there that says that I might have that authority when I really don't. Because I've consistently said to folks, I don't have that authority. I can work with you on the CPE side, but I can't work with you on the late fee waiver, side. So I would prefer that the words that the two words in here that relate to, and I would have to pull it up unless Angie gets ahead of me. There's two words that I would prefer that come out of item 8.
Just the waiver of the fees.
That is essentially the fee waiver portion. Kind of remove the late fee waiver portion out of item 8. And
Currently, it says review and approve as appropriate waiver requests of late fees or penalty CPE as provided for an applicable board rule.
So I think we just
Then
need to
take out late fees.
we just need to take out the word late fees out of item 8. And I would prefer that if the board's willing to do
Late
that.
fees and or.
I think just, yeah, right, correct.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Sorry, it'll
The
read
words
funny.
Late fees or.
I would just prefer if we could
Makes sense.
be clean and just take it out.
Great.
And then the other thing is what's not in there. Because sometimes with documents that you look at, it's just as important as to what's in there, as opposed to what's not in there, right? We've essentially chosen to give you this document that essentially has a construct that says, this is what's delegated to me, and I may delegate some of these things further down at the staff level, right? But at the risk of stating the obvious, we have Shelley now, right? So to me, that document gives me flexibility that I need to do things like, hey, Shelley is now up to speed enough to take over, for example, waivers of CPE during renewals. It doesn't have to come to me anymore, right? And as long as the board's comfortable with that, this gives me pretty much the utmost flexibility to figure out, what it is that I feel like I can start delegating around this.
So do you review and process and determine every single application that comes through the door?
Do I review every what?
Review, process, and determine all the stuff for applications that come through the door?
No,
So that's number one. So that's obviously it's delegated to staff. And Shelley, as I understand, is part of your staff.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think she would be good.
And I'm talking about the waiver stuff and all those things, the things where things get a little dicey.
I think we leave that up to your discretion.
So just
You're dangerous, it comes to
I
me.
just want to be really clear that
That's what I just heard.
discretion around this in terms of how I handle the delegation, right? And as long as the board's cool with that, then we don't need to make any further fixes.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
Unless it's unusual, and then number 24 says you'll bring it back to them. Something weird happens.
I am entertaining motions to adopt as presented, as amended, the delegation authority to the executive director.
Case Robinson, so moved.
Tanya Moffett, second.
Any discussion? The amended part was the late fees. Any other discussion? Let's take a vote.
Logan Steele, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Board review of first draft potential key performance measure changes.
Cool. So I will do a very brief intro, and then I'll turn it over to Shelley. So I want to just do a very brief level set. Essentially, most are familiar with the term performance measures, right? When we say key performance measures in the context of a board like this or a state agency, what we're referring to is what is, at least in part, what we call an externally facing construct, which means every agency that goes through the budget process at the Oregon State Legislature is required to have some key performance measures that are actually legislatively approved as part of their budget process. So in your materials, I excerpted out, just to give you a little bit of the base, what we currently have as key performance measures in our system that came out of the legislature, right? What that document does not contain, because it's a little bit noodly to find, and I didn't want to overwhelm you with even more, is that in our last budget session in 2025, right, I was very clear with the committee that as we were doing this rebuilding that we've been kind of on this pathway on since I came back in 2022, right, that really our focus was on the rebuild, not on tweaking our performance measures, right? And essentially signaled to them a openness to us working internally to update our performance measure construct. That then ended up in our work session becoming a directive from the, so it morphed from me kind of putting it on the record that we're open to and thinking to about this for 27, and morphed at the end of the budget process to an actual legislative direction from the budget committee that basically said, thou must come into the 27-29 budget process with a proposal to update your performance measures, right? So what's happening now is that when you look at what we already have, what you see is that we have a lot more performance measures on the compliance side than we do on the licensing program side. And essentially, therefore, our focus really was primarily on the licensing side. I've cleared, we internally talked with compliance, and we don't really want to make tweaks to our performance measures that seem to be working really well for us on the compliance side. But I asked Shelley, as our new deputy, to take the lead to work with our team internally to start drafting up a set of updated performance measures for the licensing space. And if you may recall, at the last board meeting, to connect the final dot, at the last board meeting, I said it was important to us to have a little bit of feedback from you at the early stages so that we can avoid a situation at the June board meeting when it's essentially, that's really the only time you're going to see a formal agency request budget saying, can you please put this in the door? If we have a conversation with you about performance measures, then it's almost too late for us to change course in a really significant way. So we wanted to at least take the opportunity today to share with you, hey, here is what, where the licensing team and where Shelley's currently at. That's the intro. We'll turn it over to you, Shelley.
Okay. I'm just noticing I'm not even numbered correctly, and that distracted me. But anyway, so we came up with a few KPMs. The first one that we came up with is initial review of license applications, and that we will do that within 10 days of receipt. And our target on that is 85%. And the explanation behind the 85%, it really has to do with the flow of work for licensing. It can be at times manageable, but when we come into either firm renewal and or CPA/PA renewal seasons, we have a fluctuation. The hope is that we could attain it 100% of the time, but we would hate to say we know we could do it 100% of the time when the reality is we may not be able to do that. should somebody fall ill, take vacation, that sort of thing. So that's why we have the target set at 85%. Goal 100%, but target where we think we're going to land is 85%. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And then the explanation of the method on that, really getting kind of knee deep into it. How do we determine the 10 days is what's under the explanation of the method. So when an application comes in, there's a date stamp applied to it. It is typically assigned to licensing 1 day after that. So we would always have a hard and fast start time because we're going to have a date stamp, and we know our 10-day begins the day after the date stamp. We have a tracking sheet to track all of these items. So then what does it actually mean? Initial review means you open the application, you make a determination in one of two ways. It's either complete, at which point it goes to second review, or it's incomplete, at which point in time we reach out to the applicant for additional information. Any questions on that KPM or methodology?
I'm assuming the 10 days is 10 business days.
10 business days, correct.
I don't know if you want to specify that, but.
Yeah, you should.
Thank you, that's a good suggestion. Okay. The next KPM is going to measure the percentage of time in which we actually issue the license within 3 days of the completed initial license application. Our target there is 90% of the time. What exactly does that mean? What it means is we're going to measure time from completion of our internal approval. So when we get that second level approval, do we then at that point get our issuance of either the letter to affirm or congratulations letter and a wallet card out to the applicant? And specifically on this KPM, we are going to be focused on initial license issuance. The reason we didn't go with renewal processes for this, it gets down into our processes, but for firm renewals, for example, they come in. As they come in, we work them, we update them in FileMaker. The letters don't go out until firm renewal season is closed. So this wouldn't measure it in that way that works. And then the CPAPA renewal is handled in a different way as well. So it made sense to not include renewals in this, rather just the initial license applications.
Add business in there as well.
And to also be fully transparent, one of the things that's really hard for us in renewal season on the individual side, right? Effectively what happens is that when we flip the switch in FileMaker that says, okay, your renewal now shows through these extra 2 years, that's really what people are needing. It's not the physical card in the mail. It's what does our website show? Does the license show as renewed with a renewal date that's current? And so the focus for us has always been to try to get as quickly as possible with any individual renewal, essentially getting to the time when we can flip that switch in FileMaker. But we have such massive volumes that often the printing of the cards themselves is not terribly realistic in renewal season to occur anywhere close to the time when we actually issue that stuff. That tends to happen in batches, quite frankly, later. I don't know if, when we can deal with that, but that's essentially, we're trying to come up with measures that are somewhat realistic. And with respect to what makes a difference to the licensee, as much as they love our new cards, and we continue to get good feedback, right? What matters is what does our website show and what do we, export out to NASBA in terms of the licensure issuance renewal. And I think that's a really, really important context.
And that's some of the comment we get. So just generally speaking, can we just kind of push forward with saying, okay, if you've seen it on the website, it's good.
Right.
And then if you have questions about your card, they usually will be sent out afterwards. Mm-hmm. But call if you have questions. Is that what you'd like us to say?
Yeah.
Because that way we can help, because a lot of times people will be going like, I have this, but I don't know about that, what do I do? And so that way, we can we can support them and reduce calls to you at the same time, because it's not something that's technical.
That's actually also good for us internally to follow up on, maybe with some of our FAQs around there, so that people know that just because they have gotten their card in the mail doesn't mean that their license isn't active. Because what really counts is what shows up on the website. That may also help if we don't do that already, we can explicitly say that on the website.
And those calls that come in like that, you know, they're generally folks that have been licensed for longer than less.
Thank you. Sure, good suggestions. Okay, so then we have an internal KPM we're going to measure, which is that we do our second level approvals within 2 business days, always.
And internal simply means, just for clarity here, internal means this is something we're doing in-house. This is not something we are intending to propose to the legislature as an externally facing KPM. So that's what the difference between internal and external means. But with respect to the board, right, we think it's important to be transparent with the board that we're also adding this internal facing performance measure. And this is all still draft. We're not looking for a motion here, but what we are looking for is feedback, because we still have a few more months for us to kind of tinker with this stuff before we actually have to put this into formal documents. But the idea was to avoid a surprise for you in June when you see this stuff, particularly if there is any concerns around how we're approaching this.
Have you gone back and can you go back and look at last year's performance?
Sorry?
Can you go back and look at last year's performance with these KPMs?
Yes.
Okay. And have you gone back and looked? Just to be curious to see how well you perform?
Yeah, no, I mean, quite frankly, we actually have to show,
no, the 2 new ones. The new ones. 2 new ones.
Oh,
I don't
I'm
think we
sorry, I
can.
misunderstood that question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was over here going no while he was going yes, and I'm like, stop.
Okay, so there's 2 issues here, right? On the existing KPMs, we have history.
Yes.
But you're saying, do we know what our foreign performance has been? Are we building on data? And quite frankly, I'm not so sure.
So we could be setting an expectation of 85.9% that we may not be able to hit.
We will be able to hit it starting from 1 October when we built the Excel spreadsheet. So yes, that's actually a very good point. There were iterations of it before our licensing coordinator. I give Andrew Barlow total credit for this, but he created a spreadsheet and we initiated it, but that didn't happen until October. So starting October 1 and going forward, we will have the data that we need to support the KPM.
Yeah.
Well, the fun part of this is KPMs that are in front of legislation tend to be talking points for legislators that want to make a point locally.
Mm-hmm.
And they've called agencies to carpet on just barely missing like you got 89%. You want to explain to me why it's not 90? So it can be a fun time for an executive director.
Yes, there's always fun times around this. But I think your point around the data is there, and that's also quite frankly why I'm grateful we have a little bit more time, because we will have a little bit more data by the time we get to the June board thing. So don't be surprised if there's a little bit of tweaking based on further data that we're getting, right? For us, it's really about, are we getting the framework right? But that's a really good point. And maybe, Shelley, if you're willing to take that on, is by the time we get to the June board, maybe let's show a little bit of what does our internal data show and how does that relate to the targets that we're setting here.
Yeah, and if I could add, part of building the KPMs was having discussions with other stakeholders. And one stakeholder pointed out that they were actually told what their KPMs would be by the legislature. So I will say Martin and I were careful building our target to try to be careful to not overstate and then be held to it, number one. Number two, to try to make sure we set timeframes that were achievable within that ebb and flow, because there is a possibility the legislature could come back and say, nope, I don't like 10, make it 5.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, they can.
So there is that possibility that we're trying to think around some of those corners.
Any other comments on this? Thank you. Okay, request for 8 months, 11-day extension of reg score to pass CPA exam.
So folks, there's two reasons I'm bringing this one to you. First of all, this goes back to a discussion that occurred at the June 2025 board meeting, where we had a policy level discussion in the context of, hey, we have all these credit extensions from the credit relief initiative expiring on June 30th, 2025. I anticipate getting a wave of, just requests for further extensions. And that the discussion at the June board was, how do you want me to handle the delegated authority that I have from the board around exam credit extensions? And the message from the board at the time was, which was actually, I forgot to point this out earlier under the delegation document, which is now captured in the delegation document, was now that all this crazy period around exams and extensions is over with, we would like you, Martin, to not use your delegated authority beyond a 6 month swing. And anything that goes beyond 6 months, we would like to go back to the board, right? So that's just level setting to what happened back in June. Now, what you see behind the scenes, right? What you don't see behind the scenes is there was actually a really fun period that Haley has a little bit of knowledge of, because I blind copied her on some of the things, where because I had 6 months delegated authority, we had these June 30th credits that were expiring. There were actually a few of our Oregon candidates that really put the pedal to the metal and said, hey, if I can get possibly an up to 6 months additional extension, I'm so close. I'm only missing one more section. And you have people actually taking sections a second and a third time. And there were actually a few that I could handle under the delegated authority of the board that literally sneaked through on December 15, December 20th, December 29th, right? That essentially took their last section. So reason one, this is before you, is this is the first case that came across my desk where somebody's asking for an extension that's clearly outside the direction from the board, right? So it's essentially, if you will, in that sense, a test case. There's a second reason I'm bringing this one, because there are some, even though everything always has a little bit of a unique set of circumstances, there are some things in here that stand out a little bit to me that make it a little bit harder for me to, if you will, judge this case, right? Because in most cases, when you look at who's asking for credit extensions, 90 to at least maybe even 95% of the time, if not higher, you're dealing with folks that are essentially at the onset of their career, that are relatively kind of like, I want to make it into the CPA profession. That is my hope for home for the next decades to come, right? This is not one of those cases. This is somebody who's essentially been working on fulfilling her lifelong dream, literally for decades, worked through the education requirements, is now 62 years old. And here the issue is, right, if we grant her that extension, right, it literally means that she's done, because she stepped up, she passed, I think it was odd in her case, at the very tail end of, I think in December sometime, but essentially it was beyond the point when her, I think the reg credit is what's at issue here for her, expired. So it is also a case where whichever way we go,
she's 62 or she's 70.
She says she's 62.
She claims to be both, like an email.
She claims to be both.
Yeah.
It says 62 there.
Well, it's further down in the first email.
She says she's 70.
Yeah.
Didn't notice that, and I love the auditors in the room. Didn't notice that. So that said, it's also a hard one for me to bring, right? Because I know full well, especially in the national environment, that folks, my colleagues, NASBA, there's generally kind of a discouragement for jurisdictions to go outside the 36 months box because we're trying to treat all candidates the same, right? And that's a very legitimate policy argument, right? So for me, it's a little bit of a test case of where does the board really land on this stuff? Because quite frankly, if the message I get from the board saying, Martin, don't bring this stuff. If it's over 6 months, yeah, we told you to bring it to the board, but really it needs to be a hard line, then that's a valuable message for me to hear that I won't bring these things in the future, right? But I have a real case now. I have a real person asking, and it's kind of like, that's where I felt like, hey, this actually matters, not just with respect to the individual, but it also, I'm looking for a little bit of a signal of, do you want me to bring the ones that are kind of like this close to the edge in the future? Does that make sense?
Make a motion to amend delegation of authority to the executive director to review extensions up to 9 months.
I know there's no second.
I don't know. What was that?
You need to let the laughter stop first.
Jason.
No, this one, so not looking at the age, not looking at other factors, just on the fact of the request. It's outside it's already at 30 months. And now we're going another 6 months. And now this is further past that. Where do we draw the line? Because there's going to be a 9-month and 10-day one and a 10-month and 2-day one. So are we just going to say you passed the test once of one of the 4 sometime within the last decade, we'll call it good. I think we should just do that instead of having this stuff come in front of us all the time. Because to me, we are deciding someone's.
I know, I would be shocked if this board were ever to be like, no. I mean, unless it was like, I mean, even when it's situations where we are like, ooh, interesting character, but okay. We don't, I mean, so.
My final stand is, once they're licensed, we get to do with them as we please. They can't mess up past that. So why not get somebody, if they pass the test once, I'm not gonna pass the test if I go back and take it again. I guarantee that. So if they pass the test once, then.
Are you advocating to remove the rule?
On age, on age, I was looking at the age of 61. In the back, there was a reference to, I got 69 and 70.
Yeah, let's get it.
It's a test.
No. She actually says.
She's 70 years old.
70 years old.
Kids are pushing her to.
Yes, I was like reading, I have a question too. How is Washington put their extension on?
Washington is in a completely different place. So, and we've actually talked about this.
She mentions Montana. I think she's fishing for a place to get her CPA license, but it's regardless. I'm trying to ignore that piece. I'm trying to ignore the math piece where she misses how old she is. That could be a dementia stuff, but that's okay. I'm more concerned with the validity of where do we draw the line, and are we ever going to draw a line? Okay, so then it's an easy. You want me to make a motion? I make a motion that we accept the extension for 8 months and 11 days for Jay.
I second that. Tanya Moffett.
Thank you, Jason Robinson, for your motion. Any discussion on this matter?
Yeah, I have a question. Where did the 30 days beyond, or the 6 months beyond the 30 months come from?
It came from Washington. The 6 months beyond the 30 months.
Yeah.
It came from Washington because Washington didn't go with the 30 months, they did 36.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, our neighbors to the north are gonna give 6 more months. And so while we are gonna adopt what kind of most everyone else is doing because of what our neighbor is doing, we don't think that's a terrible idea. And so kind of give them the wink and the nods.
So this motion is not making that the new rule just for this person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done discussing.
And allowing 38 months and 11 days. Okay, let's take a vote.
Great. Logan Steele, I abstain.
Tanya Moffat, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Robert Olivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Thank you.
Folks, in your packets, we have a bunch of detailed reports around exam performance. I don't know if anyone wants to ask any questions around that. I would ask you to consider them. I think there is a lot of really interesting data in those forms. So I always enjoy making them part of the board packet. I do want to point out with slight amount of pride that if you look very carefully at those documents, you also see, I'll start with the good stuff and then I'll end up with something that just happened yesterday. In that document, if you read it carefully, what it also shows you is that Oregon is actually near in the top 10, I think ranked 6 out of 55 jurisdictions in terms of our passage rates. On the CPN. So we're ranked jurisdiction number 6. So we generally tend to do a little bit better around this. That said, for those of you that are now, starting to pop the champagne corks and celebrating, I would like to also say that there is a very serious discussion going on in the profession. And we actually just had a webinar yesterday with NASBA and my colleague directors, because there's been a rising set of concern for years. If you set aside the Oregon data, and if you look more at the national data, which is also in your packet, right, that there are sections of this that the CPA exam simply has really low passage rates, right? And then there's even sections, especially the ones with quite frankly, the higher, more critical thinking type skills getting tested, where we have national averages that are in the 40s, right? And there's both a very serious discussion emerging, because this has been a problem for years and years. It's been kind of, bluntly put, not gotten a lot of traction on the AICPA side. That this is also a CPA pipeline issue. There is people who are not entering this profession simply because they don't want to take on the exam, and it's very public that the passage rates of the exam are pretty low and a deterrent, right? There is a separate set of concern, which is that from a psychometric perspective, that we have that, quite frankly, it's a flag. It's a bit of a flag, right? Once you get to passage rates below 60%, right? Are you truly fairly measuring these? Like there is usually some kind of a problem here. We heard that feedback kind of from a number of jurisdictions that at some point we're going to get challenged. And there are conversations that NASBA is now facilitating where there is more pushback happening, saying, what do we need to do about essentially the passage rates here? The right thing to do is, I don't think we're ready to discuss fixes, but at least the board should become aware that there is a kind of a rising level of interest in the profession nationally, saying we can't keep going like this. This is going to start becoming a problem for the profession. We will get challenged as to why this profession operates so differently than other professions with respect to passage rates on the national competency exam. So sorry to end on the damper, but it's an important disclosure after celebrating that we're doing pretty well compared to other jurisdictions.
And Martin, I mean, are there any thoughts being thrown out in terms of the solution? Is it making the exam easier? Is it making there fewer of them? Is it?
Well, I think, quite frankly, part of it is, well, the first part of the solution, and I hate to be quite so frank in a public meeting, is that the first focus right now is to try to get enough reception at the EICPA level that they're even willing to have a conversation with us about solutions. Because whatever solutions there might be require buy-in on the EICPA side. And so far, we haven't gotten much traction that there is even an agreement that there is a problem, which means we're not even yet at a place where there is even a lot of space for discussions around a solution. That said, I don't want to evade the question either. There are suggestions out there. I'm not saying that the profession is ready to embrace any of them, right? Is to adjust the scaling. There's suggestions to do a deep dive on, are we actually measuring, right? Are we measuring the exam on 1 or 2 levels worth of experience after school, right? Is that essentially what's portions of what's getting tested? Are there pieces of the AICPA exam that are testing things that are not being taught in school? And if so, why, right? There's a lot of essentially serious conversations that are starting to happen of what are legitimate ways to figure out what some of the root causes are for these lower passage rates that we have in our power to address, right? And that's probably as far as I would probably want to go in a public session.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious. We definitely see declines in our professionals, both in taking the exam and in passing sections of the exam.
Yeah. I wonder if another factor is the exam availability has gone up over time. I don't know how long it's been, and then also if we increase the time window, that could also maybe have an impact on like how many times people are repeatedly taking exams. And so I wonder, there could be confounding factors for people being less prepared, less seriously if they could just take it whenever they want. So I'm not sure what the causes.
I mean, all of us in the room that have taken the CPA exam, it took a lot of time and effort. And I think that at least what I've seen is, I mean, Logan, you can probably attest to this too, is students sometimes don't want to put in the time and effort. And so I think part of it is a generational thing too, to be quite frank.
And then that is mirrored in higher education, like that we call it rigor, right? Has very much gone down. And this idea, like we're like even at OT, we're under pressure to not have high stakes exams, but we're always like, well, we got to prepare students for the CPA exam, and a lot of other
stressed out.
They'll be too stressed out, too anxious, And so a lot of other programs are reducing high stakes exams and not preparing, maybe as well.
I mean, you see it in high schools all the time, and now even middle schools. Like in our school district that my kids go to, they can't give homework in middle school because too many computers were getting ruined, so they are not allowing them to have computers. So now the teachers are not allowed to give them even homework. So how do you prepare them for life and things like this? I mean, it's true. I mean, think about when you were in middle school. When I was in middle school, we had homework. I mean, and then in high school, they can miss their deadlines and there's no consequences as long as they have it done by the end of the term, by the end of the quarter. And so there's not that accountability. And so it's teaching them these behaviors that then we're starting to now see. My personal opinion, granted, that's my soapbox. So
we're taking shots at it.
Okay. Study those results. Attendance at NASBA Western Regional Conference in Park City, Utah, June 22nd through 25th.
All right, so full disclosure, folks, we are still in travel restriction mode. Okay, so this is it's not open season, but what it is that while Haley and I essentially, because we are essentially board members of NASBA, can essentially have a way to essentially say this is essential travel as opposed to non-essential travel. There are I think there is an opportunity here, especially with respect to anyone who has not gone and is eligible for new board member training, for us to say governor's office expectation is for board members to be trained and well essentially set. So if there is someone who is a new board member or has not yet had an opportunity to go to a new board member training, I feel like even with the travel restrictions that are in place right now by the governor, we can make an argument that that is essential travel in terms of getting somebody on board and trained. So if there is someone here, we don't have time to deal with that at the June board meeting because it'll be much too late because the signups have to occur in basically April, May for the Western regionals. That's the reason why I asked Haley to bring this up last minute on this agenda, because I realized, wait a minute, we don't have another time to discuss this. So if there's somebody here who is eligible for new board member training and can go.
What were the dates?
I'm sorry.
What were the dates?
June 22nd through 25th.
June 22nd through 25th. The LRC in theory has something on the 22nd, but that is, first of all, subject to the will of that chair. Second, yeah. So that's not a hurdle. Our CBDs can always be moved. I don't have the power to move now.
Actually, in Klamath Falls on the 25th.
So I'm feeling direction pointed a certain way towards the table, but I'm wondering if that direction is also being pointed at an opposite diagonal part of the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think either Tanya or you would be great candidates to go. There's, new board member orientation.
Logan hasn't done it.
Oh, Logan hasn't
Neither
either.
neither has Megan.
Okay, that's a good point.
Oh,
So,
it's lots.
It's pointed all around.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, there's new board member orientation is like the first sort of day, which is just
Yeah.
new board member.
And I think that the document that I put in there actually makes it clear what day that, I think that's the Tuesday, if I remember that correctly. I'll just look at the thing in there. That's in your board packet. It should be in the supplemental. Supplemental, second, should be, I think, in the second supplemental. Yep, NASPA Western Regionals, Pub 11H. And yes, so it starts off, there's a dinner on, there's a dinner for new board members on Monday, the 22nd of June. But the actual new board member training orientation is on Tuesday, June 23rd. And then the conference kicks off with a welcome dinner on Tuesday evening, and then the physical conference is Wednesday, Thursday. And it's a little bit closer in this time. Well, I guess it's Western, so I guess that shouldn't be too much of a surprise.
Well, it was in New Orleans last year. It was as far east as you could get to be still in the Western region.
Thank you for the painful reminder, Haley.
This will be easier to get to.
So
Check your calendars if you are able to go. Let Martin know.
And we will, I will
We'll
go
sort
through
it
the
out.
process of working with NASBA scholarships, which basically means retroactive reimbursement from the board and by the board from NASBA and all that good stuff, which helps us kind of fly a little bit closer to the spirit of the travel restrictions that are currently in place.
Do you want all of us to try to go, or? I don't know.
I think the other kind of piece around it is that if you have interest in like NASBA service, it's a good thing to go to. Like
Do we have a brief show of hands as to who, do we have folks here that are interested at least as in checking their calendar?
Maybe, but I have to be back in Klamath Falls by the evening of Thursday.
Interested in checking calendar.
Interested in checking calendar, so potentially 2.
Haley, would you say that your new board member training was essential for your role on the board? Okay. I would agree, but it is a good experience. I did learn a lot on my new board, and especially a lot about NASBA.
There is a lot about NASBA. One of the roles of the regional directors is to plan this whole shindig. And so we are doing some discussion on the new board member orientation, particularly around like when we are talking about like public meetings laws and Robert's Rules of Order and that type of thing. Boards handle things very differently from state to state, and it's much more helpful, we believe, for the board members in attendance for us to be able to say like, okay, Logan, like this piece is really only applicable to California. But in Oregon, they do this, kind of like we had a whole discussion last year around recording of executive session. And Texas was like, hell no, we don't record anything. There is no recording. We're not doing that. And then I was like, well, we record so that we can take the minutes. And she's like, no minutes. So it was just a very like different. So then I remember in my new board member orientation feeling like, well, how am I supposed to know what we do in my state? And so we're trying to recraft the training on that specifically to kind of touch on some points there. So no, I don't think it was critical, but I do think that it is can be helpful.
I do also think that in fairness, this particular conference could become a little bit more interesting than prior ones. So I'm not talking about the training now, but the conference to follow. Just because we're heading into this really critical phase where the profession is really grappling with the APSP response and quite frankly having some board member presence around those discussions, input, and hearing kind of what some of the other thought process feedback are is definitely helpful for us as well.
Mm-hmm. Megan, you came off mute. Did you have a comment?
Well, I was just thinking I might be able to make it, but I need to sort of spend some time with my calendar.
Yeah. The end of June is a tricky time for a whole host of reasons. I agree. So, okay, great.
So,
we would love to have anybody who would like to attend be there.
Madam Chair, in a peak of extreme selfishness, since I'm about a few minutes away from needing to step out, since we're about to go to, I think,
we're going to go to settlement consideration of settlement.
Ask as a favor that we take item C on settlements first, so that I can still be here for that discussion, because that's the only one that's a little bit more
The other ones won't have any discussion typically.
Great. Yeah. All right, Jeremiah, let's go 14C and then A and B.
14C. So we got, where'd my notes just go? Sorry, Martin. Mr. Redaway had an order issued back in 2014, I believe. The order was for, there's a copy of the order in the packet there. It is basically for a few counts of misconduct that were, now we would do it as due care for not responding to clients. But those 6 counts then added in board response and I don't know, a whole mess of things. And it came to $100,000. He has paid to the Department of Revenue $111,000 through the end of December. Back in 2021, the board was presented with a request to wipe out the debt. And the board said they would consider it when he had paid amount equal to that principal, but there was no vote at the time. So a letter went out saying, try again when you get there. And he has now sent it again.
The letter a little more saying like, it's okay, like get there and then
it said,
yeah.
Which is why this matter requires, number one, there is an actual vote that needs to occur. I will say that there's 2 objectives here. One is that what we're trying to do here really is to deal with the monetary side of the equation versus reopening the actual original order. The reason why I felt compelled to, quite frankly, go through heaven and hell to try to get this ready in some way that was permissible from, or at least met DOJ standards, because I feel like this is one of the cases, if you read into detail, that leads us into really, really difficult, if not unprecedented territory, where somebody who was literally on the fringes of society has done actually an incredible job trying to keep up with the requirement that was originally imposed on him by the board, right? And I think the reality is that, as Jeremiah has pointed out in our internal discussions, is we're looking at a case where, because of the law that we're bound by, that's not even specific to the Board of Accountancy, that applies a 9% statutory rate of interest, that this gentleman has paid exactly $0.00 toward principal.
Yeah.
Right?
But the $100,000 still came to the board. Minus like.
Okay.
Minus
$20, to be really clear, and that Jeremiah used the right words, came to the Department of Revenue. What comes to the board is what is collected at the Department of Revenue minus the collection fees from the Department of Revenue.
Which are not high.
What's that?
Yeah, it's like 22,000 of that money went to
I mean,
revenue versus.
I think we paid at least $28,000 so far.
Yeah,
Did we? Okay.
Yeah. On a $1,400 payment, 275 goes to collections.
Wow.
Yeah. So in essence, what we're looking for toward, and I have heard through from an extremely well-informed source at this table, that somebody might have been willing to craft a motion for us.
Just want to clarify too that the settlement itself, the final order, it was a revocation, right? In addition to the.
Yeah.
So the revocations is not what we're here about. We're here about the debt, right? So there could be a motion made to basically, settle the debt, right? Like, not to let the revocation stands, everything else stands, but there can be a motion to basically say, do you need a specific?
So when I was talking with counsel on the receivable side, their wording was, I recommend the board vote to ratify the prior settlement, meaning the letter that had gone out saying.
I don't want to call it a settlement, yeah.
So it is not a settlement. It was a precursor to an offer in compromise. And then approve the current release of the debt based on that.
Basically, what we're trying to do is make sure that like we have the ability to say like DOR that we did it right, without in any way processing negating the existing final order that was issued. So making sure that it's clear that we're not like that stands. The only thing we're dealing with today is the debt. So to say basically the board motions to state that he has paid his debt in full.
Yeah, that Mr. Redway be released from the debt.
Right.
So it's a simple motion to release,
Yada, yada.
to release the respondent from the debt in this matter.
Right, yep.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
Jason Robinson, so moved.
Tanya Moffett, second.
So the motion was to release the respondent from the debt.
Yes.
Correct.
Release the respondent from the debt.
So we have a first, we have a second.
Be done. Any discussion? Yeah. Let's take a vote.
Logan Seal, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye.
Super appreciate this. And folks, please don't mind me as I pack up. I will rejoin you by Zoom in just a few minutes.
Great. We'll be done with the meeting by then.
So I will contact Mr. Redaway and work through the nitty gritty on that part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Thank you, Jeremiah. You did an enormous amount of work helping me get this ready. So
Make sure revenue knows that he's off.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to pull it back today. Truth and I don't know when his next paycheck is.
Yeah, do you need an excuse to go do that? Like, poor guy.
He gets paid tomorrow. He's
How
probably out
about
of luck.
14A, Jeremiah?
Yeah, so there are two settlements. The first one for case 25011, 1,000 in penalties, 1,000 in costs, stay 500, and the 1,000 in costs for a net of 500. Any discussion, comment on that one?
No.
Okay, and the second one, for practicing while lapsed on 25012, 10,000 in penalties, 1,000 in costs, stay 6,000 on the penalties, and 1,000 in costs for a net of 4,000. We will pay it in 4 payments.
We motion to approve these or? Yeah.
I make a motion to approve both settlements as stated.
I second Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion? Take a vote.
Logan Steele, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes. Thank you. I'm trying to figure out where we are. I think I know. I believe we are to 16, report of vice chair.
Madam Chair, if I may, if I can combine that with 19A.
For sure.
Just comment on the WAC meeting, we're still grappling with what is public accounting with licensees, and even among the board. I know we talked about bookkeeping and preparation of financial statements. So that's just an example of a small discussion that came up during BOAC pertaining to a specific case. But case aside, the point I want to make is that we're still spinning around with that. Is, what is public accounting? And people with lapsed licenses are doing things and they don't think they're doing that. And even to tell you the truth, I'm kind of in the gray area of what exactly when we apply that to the cases.
Do you think that the table that we looked at this morning will help with potentially some of that?
The license.
The license, like what people can do and stuff. Yeah, do you
Maybe.
think that will help a little bit? I feel like that would have been helpful when I was on BOA.
I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yes, I feel like that's the one that we've been grappling with for quite some time. And yeah, that's where it's going to come to play for sure. All right, report of the treasurer.
So if you look at closely at the budgetary and actuals, it looks like we're really upside down on our expenditures. And Martin decided to throw in the salary pot piece there, so it looks less excruciating. But we don't know for sure if we will get money to fund that salary fund. But regardless of that, we're doing fine. We still have enough cash on hand to survive for many months. So, and we have funded $1 million scholarship process. Awesome.
Right.
One last comment to that. So a decade ago, Martin put in place the process for scooping up our interest into our own fund, which is not heard of for other agencies. Any other agency that has investments, their stuff goes to the general fund all the time. So it's rare to have that in place. And that has paid for almost $700,000. I'm just thinking that decision back then is pretty much what funded our $1 million decision this year.
Wow. And he's not on the phone to hear you say that.
I waited on purpose to. I don't need him to have a bigger head than he already has.
I looked on there really quick. I'm like, oh, is he back on?
Did you say 700,000?
Almost $700,000, yeah.
Yeah, I think Scott Wright played a big role in that as well to figure out how to create it. Martin's, good.
Just missed it.
Okay, Shelley.
I would like to discuss a little bit our firm renewal process. As of this morning, in our FileMaker software, we showed 609 active firms with an expiration date of 2027. What is interesting is there's an additional 288 that were active through 2025. We think in a couple days we're going to be done with renewal. We think we'll have a few more that come in under the wire. It's unlikely we're going to have 288. So why am I bringing up the data? Because we're trying to track whether there's a dip in the number of firms that could be attributed to mergers and things like that. So another piece of the data would show that at the end of 2024, there were 858 total firms. And right now with our renewal, we have 609 with 288 outstanding. So I think it's going to become much clearer in the next week if we had kind of that big dip. So that's it.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm next, right?
Review oversight, yep.
So Megan, thank you for letting me go to your PROC meeting.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no problem. It was really interesting to go in there because I've seen kind of both sides from being a former board member from OSCPA on the peer review side. So it was really interesting to hear how things are going. Nothing really to report though, so yeah.
Ratification requests, CPA certificates, permits, firm registrations, municipal registrations. Do we have any municipal registrations?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I make a motion to accept the CPA certifications, permits, and firm registrations as presented.
I second that, Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Olivia, aye.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. You included municipals in there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Our next regular board meeting will not be on Thursday, June the 4th. It will instead be on April 29th. And then we'll meet again on June 4th. So we will see you then. It is 1:51 p.m. Adjourned.
Look at you.